Ladies and gentlemen, here he is. Woo! The sensation, Jason Gavon!
Danmark har fået en ny verdensmester. Mikkel Kessler. He's the fucking champion of the world. Mikkel, man.
Everyone to the 125th edition of the Nuthouse Podcast, brought to you by BoxSalam.com. I'm your host Andy Patterson. With me today I've got Adam Smith, Kurt Ward, Steve Wellens and Alex Morris. No Americans on the show today. I think Dave the Hater's kind of ducking us again, and Donny's up to something else. Apparently he only watched Gonzalez last night, folks missing out on Golovkin, so he's becoming a part-time fan. No lot of action last night, which was actually pretty good because I was getting slightly fatigued over the course of the last couple of weeks here. But Granny Golovkin made it 20 stoppages in a row last night against William Monroe Jr. Twice dropping Monroe in the second round, the first being off a brutal left hook. Monroe showed bottle getting back up. He could have quit at that moment. I wouldn't really blamed him actually, and came back to have a decent enough fourth round. And as the fight went on, I thought that, Golovkin seemed to be content to stand in front of Monroe and using a kind of sway defence that, saw him take a few shots, especially in the fourth round anyway. He was certainly slack with his defensive duties last night, maybe because Golovkin felt that Monroe had nothing really to offer, or as HBO mentioned last night, is he making himself look hittable to entice the likes of Cotto and Canelo to the table. But no doubt we'll come to that in a minute, but Monroe was eventually forced to throw the towel after getting dropped in the sixth round, which saw referee Jack Reese asking if he wanted to go on, and Monroe basically stated, "I'm done." Alex, you're one of the biggest Golovkin fans around, mate. Brutal punching power again from Golovkin, but do you think it was a rather subdued performance from Golovkin last night?
Yeah, I think that, Monroe wasn't really expected to do much. It was more of a stay busy fight for Golovkin. You really can't, when we watch Golovkin, it's mostly just to see, how he's doing this, just the experience of seeing this phenomenal fighter in action. And I think Monroe really isn't an opponent that we should be building up too much. I think that Golovkin most likely just went out there. He underestimated his opponent. He took it as a bit of a sparring session. I mean, we saw the beatdown that happened in the second round, and he just seemed to lay off of him after that. But he seemed to want to give the fans their money's worth almost. As you said, he just stood in front of him. He bobbed and he weaved a little bit, and he really wasn't as, I don't know. I don't think he was as aggressive as he has been in the past. Maybe he was just being a bit soft on Monroe. But obviously he still absolutely splattered him and made him quit in the sixth round. But he could have ended it a lot quicker. I think he got tagged quite a bit as well. I think that's just an underestimation sort of thing. but then again, Golovkin, he's never been really known for an exquisite defense. He's happy to take a punch to give one, because usually the punch that he takes doesn't really affect his chin that much, and the punch that he throws back fucks you up. So he's happy to do that. You know, again, like I said, it's just nice to see him out there. It's nice to see him keep busy. I'd rather him be fighting anyone than fighting no one, since, as we know, certain people in the division, certain lineal champions, want nothing to do with him at the moment. And, you know, this is the problem with the middleweight division. He doesn't have the option of fighters, you know, either coming up to fight him or, you know, people just being good enough to fight him. The fact is, you know, the top 10 of middleweight is incredibly weak. Even the top 5 is pretty weak. It's just Golovkin, maybe Cotto, maybe Peter Quillin, but we saw how weak Quillin looked against Andy Lee. No disrespect to Andy Lee, you know, I'm a big fan of his, but he is a very limited fighter himself, especially at middleweight. He's far too small for these guys. And, you know, what's Golovkin to do? He's either got to move up in weight, which almost seems unfair to ask of a man who's, you know, a career middleweight at this point, but if he wants to enhance his legacy and get those big fights, that's what he's going to have to do. And, you know, that's what we're going to see to happen. Eventually, though, he's going to be earning so much money, and he's becoming such a big star in the US, and I think that last night that proved what a star he is, that he's going to be able to generate the money to get these fighters to come and fight him. And, you know, it's just a waiting game at this point.
Yeah, at some point, I think Golovkin's going to have to take the short end of the cash if he's going to get that breakout fight. But, Kurt, you've heard me and Alex mention a rather kind of subdued performance last night. So what was Golovkin mentioning last night when he says, "I give big drama show"?
Well, he speaks better English than Scott Quigg, doesn't he? So there's something I can understand English. You know, he's learned it pretty well. I thought. Remember when he first came over, it was a bit retarded / Borat. So you know, he's picked it up quite well. But yeah, I mean, he was in a lose-lose situation. I thought yesterday. I mean, bums him out early. No one cares because they haven't seen much of Monroe. And if he struggles with him, then he gets criticised because because no one's heard of Monroe again. So, you know, I thought people are going to say, you know, defensively he's lapsed, he takes too many shots, but I genuinely do think that he's a guy who, you know, if he feels the guy doesn't offer much, like in terms of punching power, he's happy to take a punch to get close to them. If they're all, you know, ear off guards, and it's much tougher to get to. And, you know, I remember when he fought Curtis Stevens, and I thought he was a lot more cautious in that fight because Stevens can punch, and these type of guys, I mean, Daniel Gill was the same. Gill was landing some good shots on him, but he just doesn't punch hard enough. And, you know, if he's going to fight someone, even an Andre Ward, who's much stronger and much bigger than Monroe, he's not going to be the same. He's not going to let a guy hit him like that. But if people are watching that and it makes them think that, you know, that they can get to him, then hopefully we can see some of these guys finally stepping up. But so far, people keep saying he's a hype job or he hasn't got a good defence. You know, he maybe he goes a bit gung-ho at times, but if that's the case, why don't these guys fight him and put an end to the hype job? But they don't seem to want him, and, you know, as long as he's active, you know, we just hope that eventually someone will take him on. I do think that Canelo is the most likeliest option. I do think that, you know, give him a chance to come up to middleweight and let him have a fight there at least, and then I think he will generally want that fight. I was critic of Canelo, but he's the list of opponents that he's taken on has shown that, you know, this guy wants to fight the names, he wants to fight the guys that...
But will Oscar want that fight?
Well, Oscar didn't want the Lara fight, did he? But Canelo still took it. So I don't think Oscar, he won't want the fight, but I think Canelo calls the shots there. So, you know, that's the fight that's more likely. Cotto's never going to get in the ring with Golovkin. That's a no hope. And, I mean, what do you make of the people on Twitter saying Floyd should fight Golovkin? I mean, the journalist guy, Kevin Mitchell, he's been going on about it. I mean, I don't think that's... I'm not a fan of Floyd, but I think that's quite unfair on Floyd, to be honest.
Sanchez has stated that the only fight they'll take at 154 is Floyd now. Floyd isn't real Leonard, so he's not going to take that risk. So, why ask Golovkin to come down all that weight, you know, and stripping off another, 4 or 5 pounds? I mean, if Floyd was ever going to take it, I would imagine he'd be able to up and brought down like 152, maybe even 150, to stack the deck heavily against Golovkin.
Well, that's the thing about this, is what I think, that Floyd shouldn't take it, and I think it's unreasonable to take it for him and unreasonable for us to expect him to take it. But if he did take it, he would get such big plaudits for it, and, you know, in the back of my mind I'm thinking, well, yeah, maybe he should take it, because that is the sort of thing that, you know, the Legends of Great would have done. You know what I mean?
I do think the people who really want him to take it are people who really just don't like Floyd, and I can understand why they don't like him, but they want to see him get destroyed. But you can't be saying that and then, you know, you can't be defending Golovkin. You could say, well, let's see Golovkin take on Kovalev. That's a fight that can be made. It's the same jump, really. And Golovkin, he's actually in his actual prime right now. He's a young guy. Floyd's moved up for the weights and he's 38. I mean, you know, I don't care how much you dislike the guy. I think that's unfair on him to say, oh, he's ducking him, because let's be honest, he just beat Pacquiao. People said he wouldn't fight. And if he did go up and beat Golovkin, which I don't think he would at all, but if he did, then there'd be a next guy, you know, move up again and fight Andre Ward or Kovalev. It's always someone, and Floyd will never win. So I think that, you know, that just fight needs to be forgotten about.
Mauricio Suleiman said last night that, you know, the winner of Daniel Gale, Miguel Cotto, must defend against Golovkin next. So if Cotto wins, I'm saying please let this happen, because I just want to see these two stand in the middle of the ring, and Golovkin in his best accent of Ivan Drago saying, I must break you, right? I think I would actually come in my pants straight there. But Adam, you know, Golovkin really needs that big fight, mate. I know some people I've seen on Twitter last night mention that his resume is pretty shit. Certainly is lacking a big name. You know, he is fighting, you know, I suppose the periphery of the middleweight division. It's very, very thin, as you heard Alex say. He's in the top 5, very, very thin. There's nothing really coming up from 154 apart from Canelo looking to swell the ranks. So a move to 168 also doesn't seem to be appearing on the cards either, mate. So he's desperate for the unification fights. Cotto, Canelo, if it doesn't happen next, conceivably, would you prefer to see maybe Lemieux, the in-dam winner, face up against Golovkin?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Especially Lemieux, anyway.
Yeah, he's in a really tough position, because I think Golovkin going up to 168 would not help him at all. He's not a massive middleweight, as we've discussed before, and you know, going up, I don't think would be helpful to him, but he might be forced to. But it's interesting that, especially in the last year or so, we have seen him become more of a star in America, and a decent opponent for him. Either Canelo or Cotto, then I think that, you know, definitely a pay-per-view in America, which is positive for him. But yeah, he is in a strange position, and you can see why. You know, Cotto, we've discussed it many a time. We can see why while he'll do everything in his power to avoid Golovkin, because, you know, Golovkin would smash him to pieces. But it's difficult for me to explain my thoughts, really. So, but obviously last night, again, it's as we've expected as Golovkin, and we're all happy that, you know, that he's active, he's fighting almost, you know, second kind of tier guys at the weight, and, you know, he's doing it 4 or 5 times a year. We haven't really got a problem with that. Well, why the elite continue to duck him, unlike, you know, Andre Ward at the next weight up, he's been sitting on the sidelines doing that all. At least Golovkin's fighting, so that's good. It's good that he's, you know, selling tickets. They clearly like him in America. He's clearly, you know, the hardcore's, you know, favourite boxer most of the time. So that's good. But he got hit again. He got hit quite a lot again last night. And I mean, he gets away with it a lot of the time, because normally he hurts his opponents early. He hurt Martin Murray early. He hurt last night's opponent early. So he'll often hurt him early, and then, like you say, he's got no respect then at all for what might be coming back, as he's took the play away from him almost. Either they're too scared to throw full power because they've already been hurt and they don't want to be hurt again. So they're worried about what's going to come back. And I just think that, especially, I had probably, you could make a decent argument for Munro winning the first round. And then he obviously had the disaster in the second round. And then, you know, clearly on most cards, I would imagine, won the third and probably the fourth. So it's difficult. It would be weird me saying, but he can be outboxed at times. And by that, I mean, he can clearly lose rounds. He clearly lost the third and the fourth last night on my card. He lost some middle rounds against Martin Murray. Despite causing heavy knockdowns around the third and the fourth. So I think if he was to move up, I think Andre Ward would be a nightmare match for him. But it'll be for as long as he's boxing, he's got the ultimate equaliser. As we know with that, you know, both hands, ridiculous power, and that'll seem safe for a lot of the time. So I think this year in particular, he's kind of gone down in my estimations. I thought that, as we all did, you know, as soon as he fights the elite, he'll be pound for pound, you know, right up there. But my question is, will he ever be pound for pound? If he stays at middleweight, like I think he should, because that's his natural weight, and he shouldn't be, you know, it's not his fault that there's a lack of opponents there. You know, just talk to Vladimir Klitschko about that. If he stays at middleweight, and fighting the kind of level fighters he is, will he ever make it to the top 10 pound for pound list? I'm not sure. Or
Well, put it this way:
five.
if he completely unifies the division and wipes out all his opponents and continues this knockout or stoppage streak and stuff, I think at some point you're going to have to recognise. Some people have got him in the top 10 already. I don't personally, or maybe just on the outside of it. I think if he unifies, well, how high did Hagler go at middleweight as champion? I mean, he stopped every opponent apart from Leonard and Duran at middleweight. I think if you're going to rate Hagler in the top 10, then I think at some point you're going to have to say Golovkin deserves his place as well at some point.
I just think for Golovkin, I mean, who cares about the pound for pound list? I mean, whose pound for pound list are we talking about? Rings that no one really credits anymore. People's pound for pound lists that are all subjective. I think for Golovkin, it's just a matter of getting that big fight that gets him onto to be a superstar. That's what HBO want, and HBO have got to back him. It's like if you look at Bernard Hopkins when he was middleweight champion, he couldn't get the big fight, and it took him till he was like 36 or 37 to get the Tito Trinidad fight. He wasn't the same kind of fighter as Golovkin. Golovkin's got HBO backing him now. He's obviously got a fan base. He's building all the time. The brand is building, and HBO have got to back him. I think they've shown in the past they haven't backed Kovalev with the Stevenson fight, and I think they've got to back Golovkin. They've got to say to guys like Canelo, guys like Cotto, Andre Ward even, we want to see this fight. We don't want to see your, bullshit other fights, and we'll, invest heavily into the fight because we believe they're great fights that people want to see, and they've got to do that, and I think they will, because Golovkin, how long can he go fighting these guys? We're in an age where people don't accept these fights. People will start criticising Golovkin for fighting these. I mean, people are already starting to do it. Back in the 90s or before then, when there was no internet, fans might have been complaining, but it wasn't instantaneous. It wasn't seen as much. But now every single fight, every single card is criticised much quickly. So I think they want a big fight, and I think, who are we going to see him in with next? Someone like Highland? I mean, who really wants to see that fight? It's a waste of time. So HBO have got to back him and put him in there with someone who the fans want to see.
But at 33,
I think HBO are going to back him. They seem to like him, don't they? I think HBO are going to put the money where their mouth is on this one.
At 33, how long can it go on? Because as we've said, it's so light in terms of real contenders. If Canelo needs time to grow into the weight and Cotto continues running, really, who is out there except for them two?
Well, we'll come on to that in a bit. Steve, I wanted to ask you a question. I think the general consensus is that, Golovkin didn't look himself last night. I mentioned last week, maybe the fact that he's 33 years old, the hard amateur career, fighting 4 or 5 times a year, having to make weight 4 or 5 times a year and stuff, it's just kind of starting to take its toll slightly. But do you give credence to the HBO comments that maybe he made himself get hit last night to try and entice the likes of Canelo and Cotto out of the woodwork to fight him?
There could be an element of truth to that, Andy. Halfway through the fight, he did sort of put the earmuffs on and, go head-to-head with Munro, and I did get the impression at times that he was giving Munro a chance that maybe he didn't have in there, so there could be some truth in that. I actually think that Munro was sort of hand-picked last night for future tests to come. I got the impression beforehand that they wanted like a fast, sort of slick southpaw to see how Golovkin looked against this kind of style. And they picked Munro because he wasn't a big puncher, but he could present that sort of fast style, that bobbing and weaving, getting the jab going, to see how Gennady would cope with that if he does move up and fights the likes of an Andre Ward or somebody like that. And if Munro had punched harder, I think then it would have become more interesting whether Golovkin was deliberately taking the punches or whether Willie Munro was just tougher or better than he expected. Either way, he was landing with some shots, especially with good body shots. And the fact that Golovkin came flying out the blocks and threw the left hook straight away, he was preparing for the fast southpaw. It was as if he'd been watching the videos and they'd told him, right, go straight out, throw the left hook. He was throwing it over and over again. And I think the thing is with Golovkin, I reckon whenever the opposition gets better, he will rise to the occasion. I definitely think that he's sort of putting it in, going through the motions a little bit against these guys. I'm glad he's fighting Munro rather than being inactive, but whenever he steps up against the likes of an Alvarez or a Cotto or even a Quillin or a Ward or whatever, I think he'll start using the jab, he'll start boxing a little bit more conservatively, taking less chances, and doing what he always does. The thing I love about watching him is the way he cuts the ring off. It's beautiful the way he works his opponents without even throwing punches. He's always he doesn't even set traps. He's just always.
They're always
on top
under
of
pressure, aren't they? It seems like
Always
they're always
under
under
pressure.
pressure without him doing anything.
Exactly, even without throwing shots, you're always under pressure. I mean, Monroe was absolutely blown out of his arse at the end of the 4th round. I mean, I know he took a fair few punches, but it looked like he'd already gone about 12 rounds. And just before I finish off, I will give some credit to Monroe, actually, because I think I saw, I can't remember what medium it was, but some people were saying that he quit at the end of the fight. But I think that's really harsh. I mean, fair enough. He did look like a guy who he just about made the count by a gnat's wing at the end. I mean, the referee said to him, you were this close for me counting you out, and then he tried to coax him back out, but Monroe didn't want it. I mean, he'd had numerous opportunities to quit up until that point, and he just thought, you know what, I just don't fancy any more of this. But even though that sounds like a quit, I wouldn't exactly call him a quitter. I think he'd just given everything he could, and he really did give a good account of himself.
The referee actually said the words 10. So,
as he was rising, Yeah.
I think the ref did a good job because he could have called it off, but he let him get up. And I think, to be fair to Monroe, he wanted as much time as possible. He got up as late as he could. Then once he got up, he realised he was fucked and he just couldn't continue. I think his legs had gone, and people say he quit, but I think it was the right decision. He could offer nothing at that time, and he's only going to get seriously hurt.
The referee did very well. I'll give props to the referee, actually, because he used his discretion and he gave him a chance, even though he did rise a bit late. I mean, British ref, bingo, tick, let's mention him. He would have been called off, letter of the law. The referee used his discretion. He could have stopped him, but he gave him every opportunity in a championship fight to carry on, and he wasn't able to. So fair play to Monroe and the ref as well.
General consensus is that he certainly quit, so it's either quit or fight on and potentially get put in a body bag. I mean, if it continued, they would end up getting stopped at some point and just taking more permanent damage. You just never know. But just before we do move on, actually, I see Canelo took to Twitter last night. He says he wasn't impressed with what he saw, and when the day comes to move up to 160, he doesn't see much by ways of competition. He's probably right about the competition, but then Golovkin's waiting for him, and whenever he wants it, I dare say he's going to take it as well. But anyways, the Roman Empire may have re-emerged there last night, gentlemen. Roman Gonzalez turned up in the mood to basically turn the business and against former champ Edgar Souza defending his lineal flyweight title. He says, for last week actually, we did say that Souza was past his prime. Certainly looked at last night, semi-retired, but doesn't detract from the fact that Gonzalez dealt with him in a manner you'd expect a pound for pound rated fighter against a past prime opponent. Punches from a right angle, straight shots, disguised as straight straight overlooking right hands, then looked to throw in left hooks and left uppercuts as well. I think, Adam, I don't think you had a chance to see much of his fights beforehand, but I'll go to you first. I don't know if this is your first time viewing him, but give me your take on Gonzalez last night. Good to see him get some good exposure as well.
Yeah, I was blown away, to be honest. I know Souza was getting on a little bit, but certainly we've seen easier tasks handed out to so-called rising stars on HBO debut. I think Souza, according to the esteemed Box Nation team, has had 15 or 16 world title fights. So I hope that's correct. And
10 defences at light flyweight as well.
Yeah. So, and he's got a decent resume. Like I say, getting on a little bit, but I thought Gonzalez was absolutely superb last night. It was. I couldn't really believe what I was watching. It was just like a constant barrage of attack. The footwork was brilliant, and the pressure was on from the first second. He was obviously out there to make a statement, but it wasn't like Souza rolled over. He got up, I think, twice. Was still trying to throw punches. Didn't necessarily go into his shell, and was just shell shocked. To be honest, I mean, when it was kind of weird. I mean, I got up and watched it live as I normally do, and when Max after the fight, I know it was through a translator, but when he said, put up the possibility of a fight with your friend from Japan, Mr. Inu, honestly, it made my spine tingle. That would be an incredible fight. I've been chatting about it to a couple of guys today. That would be an absolutely amazing fight, and if they can keep Gonzalez in the limelight, potential rematch with Estrada, as you've mentioned, and then in UA as well. I mean, yeah, the sky's really the limit, and it should have happened. It should have been here a lot sooner, because as you've said about the lighter weights, they're not scared of taking an O. Not that Gonzalez has got one, but they're not scared of taking one. There's a lot of unification fights going on. They move up, 2 or 3 different weights because there's not much difference. If you do follow it, and you are prepared to, watch Japanese commentary or Mexican commentary, etc., it must be amazing to be a fan of it, and I am now a fan of the lower weights as a result of last night.
Kurt, good to see HBO get a lot of guys on show for a change. It really was the main thing about Gonzalez last night was the fact that he delivered a good performance, with all action. So the fans were all up in arms for him. HBO seemed to be all over him now. The $1 million purse that was to be split between Gonzalez and Estrada for a rematch wasn't raised. So hopefully HBO are going to step into the breach here. They're obviously kind of keeping an eye out as well for this Inoue fight, which I think I would prefer maybe to see this fight maybe starting next year. Let Inoue come back off his injury, get another defence under his belt. Let's see Estrada rematch. Now HBO, I've seen Estrada twice now, I believe, in Macau. I think it was the Valoria fight and the Melindo fight, actually. Both good fights, so they've got form there. Now the time is now to make this rematch, hopefully.
Yeah, and it needs to happen. And the good thing about Gonzalez is, we was talking about Golovkin there. He hasn't got a lot of options. It seems like we were saying Canelo might be the only one who really, the big name who will fight him. But with Gonzalez, there's quite a lot of guys down there. Especially if you pay interest to the lower weights. There's big fights down there for him. I mean, he's already obviously fought Yaegashi, Estrada. I mean, he can fight the rematch in Estrada and in UA as well. And, I think it was obvious he was going to deliver. Souza we mentioned it, he was a good opponent because he's a good fighter on his day, back a few years back. But he was always going to struggle with his version of Gonzalez. And, to be honest, that's what we wanted. We didn't want to see him going in there and, winning the dual points decision. We wanted to see, HBO really giving the platform and him delivering it. And I think he did. And, now I think he's going to be one of those fighters who was underrated and underappreciated, and now he's going to be ridiculously overrated to a lot of people who've never seen him before, when he should have been, hyped, quite a few years ago. And he's just thankful that he's got the opportunity now, and HBO seem to be in the business how they're looking for guys like him, Kovalev, Golovkin. It's not just the American stars that they're looking for, and that's just, you got to say full credit to HBO for that. I mean, Gonzalez, he did what he had to do. I mean, it wasn't just his punching power, his footwork was so impressive. I thought his balance, the way he could get close and get his shots off and make the other guy miss. And Souza was just out of his depth completely. And it's one of those fights where fans are going to want to see him again, and they're going to want HBO to put him back on. And I spoke to you, I don't know if it was last week or whatever, but I spoke about Larry Holmes when he done the Hernan Marquez fight that took place in the United States, and he doesn't seem a fan of the lower weights, or he didn't have a lot of opportunity to see a lot of them in action. And he was a commentator for the fight, but he became a fan. He forgot about being a commentator, and he was a fan because of the action that they delivered. And we get a lot of fans who seem to be down on the flyweights and the lower weights, a bit like they are with the cruiserweights, and they don't really get the respect. And with the smaller guys, it seems, seeing 2 grown men who are like 5'2" and 112 pounds, they don't seem to like it. And to me, I can't really understand it, but there's quite a few fans out there who think like it. So it'd be good to hear from them, if any of them are listening in the Mixer chat, who feel like that, and explain their reasons, because it's all opinions. But I just can't see how you can watch someone like Gonzalez, and you've mentioned quite a few others before, and you can't be excited by them, to be honest.
Alex, I know obviously you've seen a great deal of Gonzalez, but Steve, I don't know what your intake is to Roman Gonzalez. If you've seen much of him and stuff. Was this last night? Was this the first time you've seen him?
No, I've seen quite a bit of Gonzalez.
That was his 16th opponent, actually, who's either fought for a world title or been world champion, actually. Underrated resume as well.
Yeah, no, I don't really follow the lower weights as much as I used to, but I do know, I'm very well aware of Gonzalez, and I'm impressed with him. And I said before the fight that he brings something to the table that people want to see at the lower weights. There's not a lot of big knockout punchers, but Gonzalez does bring that, and I was hoping that he would plant the feet and really show the HBO audience, the knockout power, and that's exactly what he did. I know that Edgar Souza has seen better days, but Gonzalez didn't give him a chance to even do anything. I don't even know if Souza even landed many meaningful punches. And this is really the boxing landscape's changing, isn't it? HBO are having to be forced out to sort of find these guys. The fact they've got the Golovkins, the Gonzalezes, the Kovalevs and all these guys now, and they're showing them, because that's just the way things are moving, and fair play to HBO for giving him the opportunity. I would like to see them now sort of get behind him and maybe push for a fight with the likes of this guy Inoue. I've actually seen a bit of him on YouTube as well, and from what I've seen, I think Inoue is maybe a little bit too easy to hit. I would definitely fancy Gonzalez to win that fight if they were to meet, and I actually think Gonzalez might beat him a little bit easier than you would think as well.
Just before, I think Paul McCullers is going to come on and tell us as to why he's not a fan of the lower weight division. Just before we do, actually, Alex, I'll go to you with this question I got in off Mixler from Sean B. In an ideal world, who would Roman Gonzalez's next 3 opponents be to showcase him further to the US audience? Well, I would probably go with Estrada. Maybe not the Roonwrong fight, because, you know, he's very defensive minded, so, you know, still, but it's a chance to kind of unify all the belts. And after that, probably Inoue, maybe early next year.
Yeah, the Roonwrong fight isn't really a fight that I'd be interested. Well, I want to see the fight eventually, because it's, you know, Roonwrong's obviously an exceptional fighter, but it's not going to be a fight to showcase his talents unless, you know, Gonzalez just absolutely splatters him in the first few rounds, which I can't really see. It's going to be a lot more of a chess match, I think. Obviously, the Estrada rematch is the big one. Well, the second big one after the Inoue fight. I can't see the Inoue fight happening until at least, you know, middle of next year, maybe even the end of next year. You know, Brian Viloria, I think, would be a good one for him next. I think they were looking at that fight. Obviously, Valoria's got quite a big, well, not a big following, but, you know, a lot of the Americans know of him. He is American himself. I think he's from Hawaii or something.
He is Hawaiian, yeah.
So, yeah, and obviously he was a big champ for a long time. So that fight ideally would be, you know, best for him next, I think. You know, he's obviously going to be looking, well, possibly be looking up at a different weight as well, up at super flyweight, and this fight's there for him as well. You know, Carlos Cuadras, Solani Tete, as we saw over here a couple of months ago. Obviously the Inoue fight next year. On the point of Edgar Sosa, though, I wanted to say that, yeah, he was past his prime, but in 2013, he was in the running for, you know, Fighter of the Year at one stage, until he lost to Akira Yagashi. He fought 2 top 10 guys in the flyweight division at the time, Ulysses Solis and Giovanni Segura, and he beat both of them. And he was fighting Yagashi for the title, and he had a good chance of winning the WBC title back then. And if he won, he would have arguably deserved Fighter of the Year then over Stevenson. So, you know, even as I said, he was past his prime. I still think this is just a phenomenal win, and you couldn't really ask much more of Gonzalez in that performance last night. It was just absolutely exceptional. The way he just completely blew him away. He didn't take a step back once, I don't think, in the entire night. Landed, you know, punch perfect. You know, I was worried. I thought maybe he's gonna get a clash of heads. Maybe Sosa's gonna spoil or something, and it's gonna be a shit fight, and he's not gonna look good. But no, he went out there and he fucking smashed it. And you know, he's gonna be a star now. They're really gonna pump money into him, and you know, everyone's really gonna hopefully start enjoying the little guys a bit more.
Kurt, we've got Paul ready, mate. You just signed into Skype just now.
Yeah, I'm just going to add him.
Right. Just looking very briefly through these Twitter questions. I'll get Paul on. There's a funny one there as well. Come on, Paul. I see Shep hasn't got any questions in this week. He's kind of dying a death now, isn't he? No, Paul's not there. I'll just jump onto the fight from last night. Actually, there was actually one of the most significant fights of the weekend, which was sadly not shown. I don't think it was shown outside Africa. Actually, in fact, we've got Paul on the now. Paul, you there, mate?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, mate. Yep. You're saying in the Mixer chat that you're not a fan of the lower weights. Why is that? In fact, before you do answer that, actually, where do you stop south of actually your weight divisions?
Superfly.
Super flyweight, you stop with
yeah,
bantamweight.
Yeah, and I about Superfly bantamweight is my cut-off point, yeah, pretty much. I know about Gonzalez, Chocolatito. I haven't watched many of his fights, but the reason I don't tend to watch many fights down at those weights is, for some reason, it's just, I think Kurt mentioned it earlier on, little guys who are 5'2", 5'3", 111, whatever they are, about barely 110 pounds. For me, it looks a bit silly at times. Maybe it's more for me, but seeing two guys fight, and there's a referee a lot taller than them, for me, it just seems to look like, it gives off the image of two children fighting and an adult supervisor.
Imagine if Terry O'Connor was refereeing them. I mean, his belly would be bigger than both of them, wouldn't
it? Imagine Terry trying to break it up.
See, the good thing I think, Paul, about the lightweight divisions and stuff like that is the fact that you get a lot of action, and the main thing is, because there's really a lot of money on the table for some of these fighters, is the top guys will fight each other. I mean, yeah, I know what you're saying about something like, you may not get big knockouts and stuff, but, for instance, Coquieto getting knocked out against Jod McCall Sangte in the 12th round, it was a very, very vicious knockout. I think it was Alex mentioned it's good to have someone in this division that can actually punch. But then you've got guys like Teti up at super flyweight, he can bang a bit. Carlos Kudros can bang a bit as well.
What I do with it, just to, obviously they are very small. You just try and zone it out. You try and zone out the fact that the ref's there and he's taller, and you just try and imagine that, just ignore the fact that, they're a lot smaller. If you're watching it for your TV screen, you can't really tell much of a difference of how big they are unless they're standing next to someone who is a giant. So, and all you really need to focus on is the fact that they're smashing the fuck out of each other, and you get good knockouts. They're very fast and they're very mobile, and pretty much all of them go in there and give it a fucking good go, and they're all there to bang the other one out.
I think as well, I mean, Paul will say, but you got to think as well, a lot of these guys don't speak English, they're fighting on foreign channels, then, the commentators are, foreign as well, and you got to think if we had a division maybe, I don't know, middleweight, where every single fight was, Asian, and the fights went on HBO or Showtime or even Sky Sports, and that's another reason.
That's happening in the cruiserweight division though, isn't it? I mean, cruiserweight is pretty heavily Eastern European based, and obviously the Americans have no interest in that. So you might be right about the language barrier.
Cruiserweight's one of my favourite divisions, though, to be perfectly honest. I think the thing about the lower weights... Go on.
I was just going to say, a lot of the little guys also travel as well, which is not particularly normal in the higher weight divisions.
I think the divisions, maybe this will change in the future going forward, but I think they just don't capture the imagination, because a lot of these fighters don't tend to fight in America much. I think Gonzalez, was that his big audition on HBO last night, was it?
It was his debut, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he fought on a big American channel before that. All of these big fights tend to happen, or at least the ones I've seen, in dingy little arenas, and like you said, foreign commentators, really not very big crowds. It just seems to feel small time for me. Maybe it'll change more now that the fighters tend to be getting more recognition in America. Hopefully this Gonzalez guy gets a deal and they start showing more of the fights over there and he helps the division break through. But until then, it doesn't give off the big time feel, at least not for me, because, as you say, you don't tend to see these guys on American TV much. A lot of them don't speak English.
That's what I mean. It's not just the opponents as well, isn't it? I mean, say someone like Golovkin or Kovalev, who are obviously not American, you see them fighting every fight here. You also know their opponents. So when they're fighting someone, you've heard of them or heard of someone they faced. With someone like Gonzalez, you might watch that fight and you might think, well, I've never heard of him. Am I going to see him again? Next time I see him, it might be a year down the line. Some people just don't want to go on streams, or YouTube and watch, Japanese commentators screaming, not understanding what they're saying or anything like that. I think that's a big reason. I think more so than the size, I think for a lot of people.
I personally love the Japanese and the Mexican commentators because they always go fucking mental. Yeah, like every single punch landed. The Japanese just absolutely scream their nut off, and the Mexicans, when you've got Chavez fucking commentating, he's bouncing around out of his fucking seat. It's better than fucking, Jim Watt.
I was going to say, I mean, I don't speak Spanish, I don't speak Japanese, but they shit on Nick Hall and Jim Watt.
They have to get a mention this week, eh? They have to really get a mention this week. Paul, I mean, thing is, mate, BJ Flores would probably back up your opinion there. He's got a nomination for Belly of the Week for saying that, the flyweights make me want to go to sleep. But he needs to remember as well, as he's in a division that doesn't get shown to the American public as well, or at large anyway. But I think, last night is probably going to wake up the general observer anyway, because as well, I don't know if you caught the fight last year though. Did you watch Kantasura Takayama against Rodriguez at minimum weight?
Yeah, it was at the fight where Chavez was going mental at ringside.
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah, that was cracking.
See, that's the kind of fight you will get that way. I think it's really refreshing, especially after all the months and months and hype and build up for Pacquiao Mayweather. Fights like that tend to kind of like say it's a refreshing moment.
Yeah, I think another big reason is a lot of divisions tend to have deep histories. Like there's been so many great fighters at middleweight. There's been loads at heavyweight. There's been loads at welterweight. Even cruiserweight had fighters like David Hay and Holyfield unifying the division. So people know about these divisions, whereas these lower-weight divisions have never really had a big star in them, really have they? So there's been no reason for anyone to really pay any attention.
I mean, they've still had great fighters there.
Jimmy Wilde.
Again, it's just, how much you know. Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Wilder and Finito Lopez. I
mean,
he's the true undefeated guy. Yeah.
Jung Koo Chang, he was a great fighter as well.
I mean, they're there. It's just like you say. I guess
few and far between.
Like you said, they didn't have the exposure.
There's few and far between, especially you take it to fighters. You don't really get much TV exposure as well. I mean, think about it as well. As I remember when, what was his name? Scottish champion Paul. Wasn't it Paul Weir? Who was the light flyweight again? Paul. Oh fuck, I forgot his name. I mean, very seldom did you ever really get domestic fights, that were, shown, domestic fighters shown on television at sometimes, I think it was Paul Weir. It was two-time, I think he was light flyweight and a flyweight champion as well. He fought the South African, Jake McLalla.
Yeah, Paul Weir.
Paul Weir, aye. Was that him right enough?
Yeah.
Very seldom did you ever get his fights on TV, but the world title fights he's certainly got him. I've not had one since then, actually, and I don't really recall last time I had that flyweight on British television. Probably the Uzi Ahmed knockout against Ashley Sexton, maybe. Paul Edwards doing it British flyweight title.
But look, think back to Duke McKenzie. I mean, what was he, a free-weight
He's
world
a free-weight
champion?
aye.
I mean, he doesn't get the same recognition as, other guys because it's at the lower weights and, no one... I think people who, if they don't pay much interest, they just think, it's easy down there, you're moving up in weight, you're moving 3 pounds up in weight or 5 pounds up in weight each time. It's easy to get about and stuff like that. So I just think, if people just, hopefully HBO will be the catalyst for more, people taking interest and more, putting more on. And I think HBO are the ones that you got to bank on. I don't think Showtime will have any interest that, they're interested in Espinosa's being up Heyman's arse and showing Bob Molina against Deontay Windmill, things like that. So they're not going to show them. PBC's not going to show them. Sky are only going to show now and again. That's going to be rare. So I think hopefully HBO can show more of these guys. And if Gonzalez can fight another top guy, and hopefully he can get some kind of contract with HBO as well.
Zico's just corrected me. Actually, it was actually Pat Clinton, not Paul Weir. Cheers for that, Zico. I just couldn't remember his name. I think he ended up being a taxi driver anyway. Adam, you had a question for Paul before we let him go?
Yeah, Paul, a local question for you with the announcement of the Liverpool show. Why can't Rocky Fielding fight Callum Smith? Because the excuse given is they're trying to make it into something bigger. And on a lighter note, will you be going to watch the new Creed movie in November?
Why won't Rocky Fielding fight Paul Smith?
Yeah.
Callum Smith.
Callum, yeah.
My opinion is probably because Fielding doesn't want to fight. I think he wants Paul, but Callum Smith's better than Paul, and at this point he doesn't want to risk losing to Callum. That's my opinion anyway, because I think Callum Smith would beat Rocky. And will I go to see Creed? No. No. I don't know. When I go to watch films, I like to see spaceships and monsters fight like the Avengers. I can't be arsed watching Tony Bellew and some American guy.
I'm just on the Fielding and Smith. I'm just fed up of hearing fights that need to be grown into something bigger, and I just think it's just listening to Eddie Hearn speak about it this week. It's just gone. it's just highlighted the fact that a lot of fighters nowadays, particularly in that stable, are just bypassing the British scene and the proliferation of all these stupid array of belts, and they can pick up some silver international, and then Rocky can get in the top 10 of the IBF. It's just, I just think it's taken away from the tradition, of the game. I know we've said Anthony Joshua should be going the British title route, looking unlikely. And Callum Smith, more than anyone in the whole country, should be looking down the British title route to make the history with the four brothers, and then they come out with, it'd be bigger with a world title on the line. I mean, super middleweight, as if any of them are going to get to a world title anytime soon. It just annoys me. We're seeing,
He's had hating on Matchroom. Is this
Yeah,
some of
I am,
that? I just don't. I don't know what's
wrong,
going on now. This is Twilight Zone.
I was going to say, well, it's your mate responsible for it all, but
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Anything else you want to add, Paul?
Sorry.
No, just I made my point, and as I've said, I'll be going to that show, the Matchroom show, by the way. If you want to know that, Adam, I thought you were going to ask me that. I will be going to that show, hopefully to see Price knock out Taper. Hopefully that will make David Price versus Anthony Joshua, and hopefully David Price can knock him into next week.
Okay, mate.
Well, he's already done it once.
Can I just remind you that
Didn't give up on the lighter weights.
Stay humble.
Paul, the Turper fight has not been confirmed yet. It's going to purse bids Monday.
Well, what I've heard is that the fight's as good as done, but if it's not done, I'll be very, very surprised. If it's not.
Well, remember, De Gale was fighting for a world title in London. That was as good as done as well, but I think he's actually in Boston.
Oh, even more hatred.
Are you saying that Matchroom show isn't...
Print the posters, sell the ticket.
Legit. To be fair, that's Sauerland this time, so we can't really blame that.
Tepper guy, he's the one who brutally knocked out Martin Rogan, isn't he?
Yeah, nearly killed him.
King Tepper, yeah, broke his
jaw.
jaw.
He's got... he could bank hard. I mean, that's I think...
evil.
He knocked out Sprott as well, properly.
Yeah, he put one shot, he does it with. I mean, that guy can bang, so... Although, Price, he should be the better boxer, but... One shot, yeah, someone's getting knocked out brutally in that one.
It's going to be a big David Price. Cheers for that, Paul. Enjoy the show, mate. But as I say, don't give up faith on the light flyweight, guys. He's gone there. No, just
he hasn't got any faith to give up, has he?
We need to just very briefly touch on this fight before we go to Twitter questions. Now, as I say, one of the most significant fights of the weekend was sadly not shown, it seems, to the wider audience. I think it only appeared to be shown in Africa. Alunga Junior Makubu took on Thabose Machunu in a final eliminator to face off against Gregor Drozad for the WBC Cruiserweight title. Now, as you probably know, if you've been listening to this podcast for a decent length of time, Machuno has been well thought of, especially between me and Kurt after we saw him defeat Eddie Chambers. And we were looking forward to see how he'd fare last night, but as you probably know, the fight wasn't shown anywhere, it seems. So we took the unusual step. Kurt, Alex and I kind of followed the fight blow by blow on Twitter for the first time, I don't know how long, if not for the first time. It seemed that Machuno went into an early lead and even hurt Makubu at times, but the noted stamina issues came back to haunt him again around about the 8th round, which WBC open scoring had it all in favour of Machuno. But I don't think it was very, very, very wide on the cards, actually. Now, I've seen the GIF file of it, actually, the actual knockout. It was a left uppercut followed by a left hook that dropped Machuno flat in his face. Pretty emphatic knockout, actually. So we can't really get into the fight in much detail, but the only thing I've really got to say, guys, is main events have really dropped their bollock here. Surely they should have got this fight streamed on YouTube or on some sort of online platform, surely, Kurt.
Well, yeah, the thing is as well, that's really annoying. They won the purse bids for that fight, and then they put it out there, which obviously makes sense, being that even though Makabu is from the Congo, he's obviously based in South Africa. Surely they could have put it on their website or YouTube, some kind of stream, even a delayed stream, or even, uploaded it afterwards, but nothing. And we just got to hope that some, South African who watched it uploads it, and at the moment it doesn't look too good, but, Cruiserweight, I've said before, is my favourite division. There's so many great fights. It gets neglected. I've said it before, it's the red-headed stepchild of boxing world, which gets me in trouble, but, there it is.
You keep saying it, though, don't you?
Wow.
It just pisses off the redheads,
But...
Do you guys change the tubes?
And this fight, I mean, it was such a good clash of styles between two really good guys who were just below that world title contention. And, you know, we see other guys getting title shots when they don't deserve it. This one is, you know, to get a title shot, the winner of this will have earned it by beating a really good fighter. And, you know, I thought Michunu was going to do it, but the stamina issues have obviously played a part again. It's a shame because he's such an excellent boxer. I mean, he's still only young, so hopefully he can come back and, you know, carry on. But, you know, Makabu has, you know, has scored. I mean, the gift of it is a show, you know, a brutal knockout, and his power and the strength that he has, he's going to be trouble for anyone. But I don't see him winning the WBC title. To be honest, I think Michunu would have been a tougher fight. And I just think, you know, but with his power, he's going to give him a big chance. But I just see him getting outboxed. I think he will be outboxed. It's just down the stretch if he can apply that power and strength. But a really good fight, and it's just a shame, you know, the loser has to go back now. And, you know, cruiserweight is just such a tough division because, you know, someone like Tony Bellew, you know, if he wins a world title in this division, which I don't think he will, but if he did, I wouldn't call him a private champion because he'd have done it against a really tough opponent. There ain't no, you know, weak title holders here, you know, guys who, you know, like if you look at middleweight or super middleweight, you got like old guys who are just, you know, hanging onto the belt, you know, but any way they can. All the guys are really, you know, got their high quality in their own right, so it's going to be tough. But yeah, I mean, Makabu now, what's the name of that guy he's fighting? Drods?
Gregor Drozdov. He's fighting next Friday. I think the rematch against Diablo Verdalchik was actually, I think he became ill, so they've got someone else lined up, I think.
They've got a guy the guy who they've brought in is actually pretty decent because he lost on a majority decision to Ala Farabi a couple of years ago in America. So he looks a decent, you know, late replacement. But I mean, I don't know why they even had a rematch for that because Verdalchik who's a good fighter himself, was soundly beaten. But you know, Drods or whatever you pronounce it, he looks a really good fighter. And I mean, he's 35 now. It's took him a while to get onto the world scene, I think, you know, but. I mean, he's a really good boxer as well, and I think he'll beat Makabu. But that's another really good fight for the cruiserweights.
Yeah, I mean, with Michunu, just the thing about the stamina, I just think he's carrying a bit too much bulk, and I think from what I was reading on Twitter last night, he started that fight pretty at a kind of high pace, and you know, I don't know if he's maybe having to kind of pace himself better, maybe kind of last a distance better, but it's certainly from the last 3 fights that I've seen of him anyway, just scouting the one from last night. That stamina is going to be a big major problem for him in the future unless he doesn't be able to kind of basically manage it better.
Is it just? I mean, is he able to trim any off? Is he? Obviously, it's a massive drop down.
Well, it's just like pure muscle. By the looks of the guy, I mean, he's I think he's short, 5'10". He's short and squat. 5'10" for a cruiserweight, quite small. I mean, at 5'10" fighter, you're looking at more like a middleweight there, light middleweight.
But he definitely has the stamina issues because in his last fight in the States, he was against a guy and he faded against him, and it wasn't because he was in trouble or anything. He just faded. I mean, he doesn't fight at a quick pace or anything. He just seems to have that Jean Pascal about him where, you know, for whatever reason, he just starts to fade. And I think if he could fight just 10 rounds, he'd be fine. But those last few rounds, I just think, I don't know if it's a mental thing, but hopefully it's something he can work on because, you know, he's such a sound defensive boxer, and, you know, he is a little guy compared to a lot of those in the division, but, you know, he's defensive abilities of, you know, as he showed against Eddie Chambers, I mean, he was levels above Eddie Chambers, who's, you know, not a bad fighter himself, so hopefully he'll come back, which I think he will, and, you know, we're going to see more great fights in the cruiserweights.
Right, Twitter questions, gentlemen. I'll start off, I think Paul, who was just on the line there, he's got one that actually go to you first with this one. Alex, this is your chance to kind of get into Hearn if you so wish. He's asking, if Price versus AJ is made, do you think they'll make the fight in Liverpool? AJ will get booed out of town, not a look that Hearn will want.
That's an interesting point. You know, it's really got to be in Liverpool, I mean, to really sell the most tickets. I think, you know, the Scousers will come out in force for that fight, whether or not, you know, it's for AJ or Price. I mean, I think he mentioned that they are firmly behind Price again now that, you know, they've seen that he's trying to make a comeback and he's, you know, fighting back in Liverpool again. So, you know, AJ would probably get the majority of the boos, but I think he would have a small contingent, you know, you get a small contingent of fans there that were specifically just to see him. You know, he's got that casual interest. Obviously, if he banged Price out, then he might have to face a torrent of abuse, but ultimately, I think they'd get over it. I think that the country-wise, the country and the nation's attitude of AJ is more important than what, a few Scousers say.
I think the recent AJ Roadshow with bums on seats on poor cards has shown that fight don't necessarily have to be in Liverpool, to be honest.
No, it doesn't have to.
It would sell it in London, I would imagine, as well.
Yeah, I think that as soon as they get, I know they're talking September, but as soon as they get some a biggish fight for Joshua, of which price would be, they'll be heading to Watford.
But it's going to be interesting to see that you talk about bandwagon jumpers and stuff. When Price was in the same position Josh was in now. He was getting hyped, talking about he's the British Klitschko, he's going to dominate everyone, for beating nobody really, for beating guys who he should be beating, and Josh was in the same boat. And I just wonder if that fight was made, and Price has to beat this Tepper first, which is no obvious thing either. But if Price was able to land a right hand on Joshua's gone, no doubt about it in my mind. What would all these people be, who are proclaiming Joshua to be the greatest, who, has got all these traits of all these, great heavyweights from yesterday? I mean, would they all just dump him like they did David Price? Because I think he was unfairly overrated and there was so much pressure put on him, and as soon as he lost, they've forgotten about him.
I think that's a fair point. I was on the Price bandwagon, to be honest, but yeah, it seems that, if the hype can soon go up in flames, and the hype on Joshua has been pretty much unprecedented, to be honest, for a fighter with with such this early stage in his career.
Regarding the Price Joshua fight, is this one of the ones they're trying to slide towards pay-per-view, either on its own or as part of a big show, or what's the thinking?
Yeah. September 12th, apparently, in the O2. Him or Dylan White, it's going to be.
Yeah, see, that's what I was going to say, because...
British title fight.
Well, Paul mentioned earlier, didn't he, we were talking about why the Callum Smith-Rocky Fielding fight's not happening, and they're trying to build this up. They're trying to build Coyle against Campbell up. They're trying to build Joshua against Price or White or whoever up. I mean, is the fact that all this is coming down from Sky, Eddie's got the sweats on, and he's trying to provide their, whatever it is, 4 or 5 pay-per-views they're asking for each year. So every show he's putting on now, every fight he's making, he's trying to think at the back of his mind, how can I build towards the Sky demands of these pay-per-views? Because they're going to ask me for another 5 next year. I mean, is this in the thinking? Is this why we're being fed the shit? And then,
Probably, yeah. The thing is now, as we've said before, and as we've seen in Liverpool, which I don't think we'll ever see as bad as that, last year in November, with the size of the stable he's got now, and some of the so-called big names, they can drop a pay-per-view card at the drop of a hat. As long as they've got a half decent main event, he can, do the special stacked undercard, and away you go.
So at the moment, all roads lead to the pay-per-views, basically.
Yeah. I think so. I had a point about Joshua then, but I bloody forgot.
Sorry, Adam, I chucked you off there.
It's Steve and his hatred of the pay-per-view.
Yeah. No, that was it. That was it. I've said for a while, and I'm continuing to stick by it, the Joshua assessment comes after Kevin Johnson. If they get Kevin Johnson out of the way, as we're expecting to do so, and then go forwards from there towards the likes of Price, Dillian White, Chisora, Fury, world stage, blah blah blah, then that's fine. I can accept that. I can accept what they've done matchmaking wise. Could have been better, obviously, but every fighter can at this stage can be better matched. But it looks like he's already on the July the 18th card. So fighting on May the 30th or July the 18th. Are they going to slip back to the Zolander Love or whatever he was called? Are they going to slip back to that level? Because I don't like this planning for fights in advance. Joshua's last 2 fights, I think, at Newcastle and Birmingham. I think that's right. Both of them fights have taken place with Kingpin Johnson on the horizon, if not at ringside. So by pure definition, those fights aren't going to be against, threatening opponents. And if they're already looking one step beyond Johnson, who he should be, but that's just another clear sign to me that, it's another 5 or 6 week turnaround. They're going to be dropping back down, to the level that we're virtually becoming fed up with. I think they need to be pushing on, and if they don't push on, that's when I will be a genuine critic.
Next question comes in from Marcus Bellinger. Steve, I'll go to you. Quite a good question, this one, actually. Should the British Board of Control bring in a rule that to challenge for a world title you must have won either the British, Commonwealth or European belts?
Well, I would be in favour of a rule like that, but how enforceable would it be? I mean, are we saying that the British Board can only enforce it because if you want to have a British licence, you have to go these routes, because otherwise they'd just sort of bypass it, wouldn't they?
Or they wouldn't sanction a fight in the UK, they wouldn't allow that fight or that fight to happen in the UK under their jurisdiction.
You mean the world title fight involving the fighter? See,
yeah.
I mean...
So they don't need to do what Frank Warren did and bring in a foreign commission like Luxembourg or whatever.
I don't know if the British Board, they maybe think they'd be cutting off their nose to spite their face. I mean, they probably say, we're happy enough with the people who are currently fighting for our belts, and then of course the European belt would be under the EBU jurisdiction, so it gets a little bit messy then. I like the sentiment of it. I think it's a great idea, because we'd go back to the sort of domestic fights where I mean, I'm all for progression, don't get me wrong. I'm not coming at this from trying to hold the sport back, but I would like to see these more traditional routes plundered, because we do end up having guys going into world title fights who are way over their head, whereas they would have been quote-unquote found out at British, Commonwealth or European level, but that's the reason why they moved past those levels, because they don't want these ticket sellers and whatever to be bumped off at lower level when they can move them through the intercontinental and international route straight to a world title fight where they're matched over their head. So from the promotional point of view, I can see exactly what they're doing. But from the board's point of view, I think it'd be very difficult to enforce, but I would be in favour of it.
Probably from, I think the last two active fighters I can think of that have done it have went the traditional route, like Commonwealth, British, European, to land a world title fight, or... No. McDonnell and Cleverly. They have a Commonwealth title. What I'm saying is, did they do like the traditional way? Commonwealth, British, European.
Oh.
Because McDonnell and Cleverly did that. I know that much.
So.
But these days, I mean, you'd at least like to see them fight for one. I would even maybe chuck the Commonwealth out, because the Commonwealth can be manipulated as a joke as well.
This question is obviously related to the fact, I think we were discussing it last week, as to why not many of Eddie Hearn's fighters fight for the British title. And then I think is he not just recently actually, he's just announced 2 British title fights. Is it not on that card on the 30th?
Yeah, it's Glenn Foote against Eggington and Tyrone Nurse against someone who I forgot. But I'm glad we're talking about the British title, because, I was thinking about it earlier, but when was the last really good British title fight we saw? I mean, I might be coming up a little bit short, but remember when we used to have the likes of Jamie Moore and Matthew Macklin, fighting each other, and like you say, before going on to world level, but now there's that many ridiculous belts about that they can get an almost, a fabricated, high ranking. Like Callum Smith's been ranked high by the WBC for a long time, but yet, who've we really seen him in with? It's difficult. I just think that the British title, decreasing in value and in, the amount of fights we see for it, I think is a direct result of the belt madness that the big boys on the world scene continue to pursue.
I think Marcus was mentioning that the Japanese have a rule like this. I think for their fighters that the Japanese whatever the
JBC or something, isn't it?
That they have to fight for that title or win that title before they'll sanction a world title.
The Japanese Boxing Commission have always been quite strict. I think up until very recently, they were only allowed to box for WBC and WBA titles, although I think they've now allowed the WBO in as well, or the IBF, one or the other anyway.
But at the end of the day, who and you can see it now, you can see Eddie doing an interview now, who are the British Boxing Board of Control to say that, for example, Callum Smith can't fight for the WBC world title?
Well, exactly. The board are self-appointed. The board are self-appointed as well, aren't they? I mean, so it's very difficult to enforce this. But I agree with the sentiment of it.
Next question, Kurt, from Lewis Kelly. He's asking, how much does that shit journal Kevin Mitchell know about boxing? Wants Floyd to fight Klitschko? I missed this comment actually.
I just think he's taking the piss, saying that Floyd should fight. He's basically saying Floyd should fight Golovkin, and it's a shame that he won't. I just think, to be honest, he's a big Golovkin fan, and he doesn't really like Floyd, and he wants to see that fight. And like I said earlier, I think Yeah, it's people want to see that fight, but most of the people who want to see it is because they want to see Floyd get knocked out. To be honest, I mean, I just think if you're looking for that fight, there's no other reason why he would. I mean, like I said, he isn't asking for Golovkin to fight Kovalev or to fight even Andre Ward. So why should a 38-year-old, who's ancient for a welterweight, to be honest, why should he be going in to fight a middleweight who hits as hard like Golovkin does? I mean, I know we all criticise Floyd at times, but I just think that's just a step too far. I mean, it's just ridiculous in my opinion.
Next question. Excuse me, sorry. Danny Robson's asking, Alex, what boxer, past or present, do you have a strange hatred for without actual reasons? Mine's is fast food Eddie Chambers. Mine's would need to be Danny Green, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to think because there's usually a reason for why I hate them. Usually they're just knobheads, or they've got a shit style, or just something like that. I'll have to have a think about that one.
Can you just hate a boxer just from his face?
Yeah, you can hate them from their faces. I mean, some guys have got really hateable faces, don't they? I mean, Paulie Malignaggi really annoys me anyway, but he's got a really annoying face.
He's actually got more of an annoying voice in his face, actually.
Yeah.
Fucking screech sometimes. Adam, you back on the call, mate? Let me drop it off there.
Yep. I must say, Alex's hate's on great form tonight. Alex's hate is really across the board, plenty of swear words, but he's doing really well.
He's not a boxer.
He's curbing his enthusiasm slightly.
He's not a boxer, but that Espinosa of Showtime, he's just the slimiest, creepiest, fucking paedophile face going, and he's just the guy I hate.
What
yeah, but there's a reason to hate him. That's a reason to hate him, because he's a fucking nasty, slimy piece of shit.
He's just the Jimmy Savile of whatever race he is.
What was the question?
Which fighter do you hate for no apparent reason?
Oh.
Usually with Joe Calzaghe, because he was the only one that kind of basically, British fighter would have been basically outclass Carl Froch,
Froch is living in his shadow for all these years.
Well, I mean, it's took 35 minutes to get onto the Froch. I'll come back to me on that one. It took me by surprise, but definitely, I'm sure there's one somewhere along the line.
Steve, Neil Ferguson's asked, can Bellew win a world title at cruiserweight fighting Hernandez after his Liverpool warm-up fight?
My answer would be unequivocally no. I'm a little bit biased. I've always been a big fan of Hernandez. He has world-class talent, but he has world-class flaws as well. But Tony ain't the man to expose those flaws, so no chance.
Steve, don't you know that Tony cuts 10 pounds nice and easy now? I won't do the Scouse accent, but you know what I mean.
Cuts 10 pounds of what?
Flab.
He carries power. Carries power!
Yeah, he ain't beating Hernandez, I don't think, unless he clocks one on him.
Yeah, I actually agree with Steve, but I think Hernandez is the best option for him because I don't think his punch resistance is the best, but I still would pick Hernandez to beat him.
He made the glass sometimes with injuries and stuff like hand problems, etc. as well.
I like how Bellew last week justified his terrible showing that we shouldn't forget in Canada because he likes to, he wants to fight the best in his division. He don't want to be gifted a title. He wants to fight the best in the division, and he thinks that Hernandez is that. It's a load of shit.
He seems to give him credit. He seems to give himself credit for just taking that fight, doesn't he? The fact that he turned up and he's like, well, what did you expect? I wasn't going to win. I wasn't going to have a go. The fact that he just turned up in Canada seems to be enough for Tony. I mean,
and it's been forgotten by Sky, and I maintain it is one of the worst showings for a world title we've seen in recent years. It was a terrible performance.
It's gonna be vicious, mate.
Yeah, Steve Bunce even says that as well. Alex, EB Boxing News. Do you think Andre Ward died a little inside him last night when he heard people from his own state booing him? I missed that as well.
Well, I mean, it's not even his own state that likes him, it's just that one little part that he's from, Oakland. I mean, even that doesn't really sell well when he fights there, apparently. He's really just not got a lot of fans, has he, Andre Ward? And obviously with the absolute surgence of Golovkin coming up through the ranks, he's going to have the most fans. And I think even if they do fight in Oakland or in California, he will be not necessarily the A side for the money, but certainly the fan favourite.
I strongly enjoyed that last night when they booed him for no apparent reason.
Broom82 is asking, who deserves a shot less, Gavin against Brook or Smith against Ward?
Got to be Frankie, hasn't it?
Oh, that's a decent question, really. Probably Smith against Ward, because he's been beaten twice recently as well. But then again, Gavin's been beat by Bunda. They're both shocking.
But Smith has fought at that level. Well, not at that Ward's level, but up.
Smith's world
no, but what I'm
class,
saying
obviously.
is okay. Say he shouldn't have got the Abraham fight, but the fact he did, and he fought Abraham twice, closer to Ward's level than what has Gavin done to get closer to Brook as a world champion.
Put it this way: Smith has beat Tony Dodson, and Gavin has beat Bradley Skeet.
He's just mixed in better company. Yeah, he might have lost, but even with Groves and DeGale, he's been in with them. Gavin's been in with Bundu, who he lost to, and he barely beat Bradley, puts him to sleep Skeet. So, I mean, Gavin has done nothing to warrant it whatsoever. I mean, I'm not, Brook wants a fight to keep him busy. I got no problem with it, but let's be honest, Gavin has done nothing to warrant it. If he'd beat Bundu, fair enough, but he
Gavin really
beat him.
he's just been in the right place at the right time, and it's quite lucky because it's made Eddie Hearn look like a promotional genius because, Frank was with Mr. Warren for a few years and, got beat by Bundo, etc. Turns up with Mr. Hearn within 6 months world title fight on pay-per-view, getting paid a few quid. It's, coincidence.
I sense some bitterness in that voice.
Kurt verbalised it better than what I was trying to say. Smith's mixed in better company. Kurt, spot on. That's what I was trying to say.
Next question for Dick. Taylor's asking, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does Golovkin-Canelo turn the panel on, and what would their predictions be? I would be full on, hard, hot and sweaty, and I'm saying Golovkin would smash him within 6 rounds.
From 1 to 10, it's probably an Audley Harrison for me, which is past 10.
Steve?
Way up towards number 10, or I don't know, who cares, 8 or 9, something like that. But I don't see Canelo being able to fight at a pace that Golovkin sets for too long. Maybe the first 4 or 5 rounds he'll match him, but after that he'll get stopped in around 7 or 8. I just don't think he has the tank to stick with Golovkin for the long haul.
He's going to get beat like a red-headed stepchild, isn't he? Let's be honest. But he'll give it a go.
I'll go for I'll give it a 9 for, a 9-incher. And, it's pretty exciting, it's pretty good, but there's still another step to go, I think, before, you get the real hype and the real build-up. You've got to see Canelo at 160 first, I think, and see him just knock someone about and see how he is at the weight.
Adam, final comment on that one?
It's difficult. I think we definitely need Canelo in a genuine middleweight fight, as Alex has said, but I think it'll be a good fight. I think Canelo would certainly take the fight, and it's just, like I said, Golovkin's gone down in my estimation. He's not quite as good as what I thought he was at the turn of the year. Is Canelo's chin good enough? Probably not. But is anyone's? That's basically the question. You need a slick boxer who's prepared to, get in close, throw a lot of punches, and have a good chin. There's not many of them about.
John Burns asking, Kurt, who speaks better English, Golovkin or Scott Quigg?
Said it earlier, easily Golovkin. Roman Gonzalez speaks better English than Scott Quigg.
Do you know what, last night as well, Golovkin, I thought that when he spoke about the opponent straight away, I thought he was going to good boy him. I had my fingers crossed, but he said good fighter instead of good boy.
Steve, Mikey D is asking, by the end of July, how many world champions do you think Britain will have?
Are we counting regulars?
By the end of July?
No.
God.
No.
How many at the moment? I mean, what are we counting as a world champion here? We've got a few.
Do we now count McDonald as a world champion? No?
No.
No.
So you got Frampton. We're going to count him as British?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's got a British licence, so throw him in.
That's a can of worms
Frampton, right, so you can't include Saunders, you can't include Froch.
Chris Eubank, interim WBA, let's count it.
You can't include him. Scott Quigg, you can't include him. So basically,
we've got Mitchell and Selby.
Mitchell and Selby still to fight.
Gale.
The Gales next week.
Yeah.
And Flanagan, when's that?
Yeah, I think
if we get 4 out of that, it'll be good.
Who's Flanagan fighting again?
I think Selby will win.
Zepeda.
Selby will beat Gradovich, I think. I don't know about Flanagan, to be honest. Couldn't tell you whether he'll beat that guy or not. About 3 or 4. DeGale, I think he'll have a hard time getting the rub of the green over there. I think Durrell will beat him.
I think DeGale wins, and
I
don't normally pay much attention into build-up, but from the videos I've seen, DeGale in training looks sensational, to be honest. And again, this is coincidences again that have made Eddie Hearn look like a promotional genius. DeGale, when he was on Channel 5, I remember he fought a Dutch bloke on Channel 5 one night, and he was shocking. But he said he's got either a hip or knee injury or both. And he did say, when I'm injury-free, I'll be a lot better. I didn't believe him as a hater, but he's come over to Matchroom Promotions. That's also coincided with getting fit, and he's looked sensational ever since.
I think George Groves has got a great chance against Purdue Jack as well.
Yeah, that's true.
But has that been made though yet?
Well, it should be though, shouldn't it? It looks like it's gonna. They've enforced it, haven't they? Sauerland, I think, will get it done.
It should be next.
But as the genius Eddie Hearn said at the start of the year, Groves can either fight DeGale next, or he can hang about for a year, pissing about with the American politics and them trying to keep hold of a belt. And we're coming into May, and we're closer than we was, but there's still no confirmation of a George Groves title fight.
Final 2 questions coming from Chavers Hamill. I'll open them up before we go to Belly of the Week. Apart from Canelo against Golovkin and Gonzalez against Inoue, what is the other one fight the panel would like to see this year? Well, obviously Kovalev against Stevenson, lads, surely?
Yeah.
I think we're unanimous with that one.
I mean, you probably mean something else than that. And that's another one of them obvious ones.
Klitschko Fury, I want to see.
Klitschko Fury or Klitschko Wilder, something like that.
Okay, so then his final question is, how many weight divisions can Chocolatito and Inoue realistically win legit world titles in? I think Gonzalez's ceiling's definitely £115. I don't think I can see him up at bantamweight. Potentially, I mean, I know there's a lot of weight difference there, but maybe bantamweight. I could probably see Inoue going up as high as bantamweight, certainly maybe super bantamweight as well.
He's quite small, isn't he, Gonzalez? He's about 5'3", I think.
You need to consider he started his career at minimum weight as well, so... Got to keep that in mind. Anyways, guys, Belly of the Week segment now.
Okay, what's
Now, you fucking rat!
Okay, what's the value of the week?
First one goes to Erislandi Lara. He tweeted after the fight last night. He says, "So after last night, Golovkin will never fight me, and I don't blame him. I would make him look worse than Canelo." Hashtag truth. Number 2 goes to the exquisite defence and excuse of Kid Galahad as to why he failed a drugs test for steroids. Honest gov, my brother spiked my drink. I'm just on full bread and water. That is going to be the most lame excuse. Now, I'm not going to come outright and blame the guy or accuse him of using PEDs, but I thought the drug of choice to spike one drink was either speed, LSD, or Rohypnol. Maybe some speed or something like that, but steroids, one of them helps you cut weight. I mean, he's not got the menopause or anything like that with this drug, so he's obviously either using it for something else, you know, so...
Well, on Friday night in the Sheffield nightclub, no one fancied raping him, so they just gave him a bit of steroids instead.
We're still talking about Kid Galahad, or?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought we'd moved on to another Sheffield fighter.
Kevin Mitchell of The Guardian, he apparently called Willie Monroe Jr. a monster of a middleweight. Number 4, this guy got a mention just when we're discussing the Roman Gonzalez fight. BJ Flores stating that the flyweight division turns him off. It's boring, it makes you want to sleep. So he turns it off, and he definitely will be tuning into Golovkin against Monroe. And Victor Ortiz, he has claimed that Floyd Mayweather still has nightmares about him and should give him a rematch. So delusions of grandeur there. That's the 5 I've got this week, guys. What about yourself, Adam?
Bellew as well.
What's he said?
He said if Cleverly fought Kovalev how he fought Bellew, then it would have gone 12 rounds with Kovalev.
Fuck it.
That guy, his lack of respect for Kovalev really gets on my nerves. He just won't give him any credit because he wants to say that, oh, I lost to the better light heavyweight in Stevenson. Remember when they had that pissing contest? Oh, I got knocked out by the better guy. No, I got knocked out by the better guy. You both got knocked out, but he's looked as the better guy. But, Cleverly will give Stevenson all the credit, but he just don't give Kovalev no credit. It doesn't matter what Cleverly went in the ring with, a baseball bat, a machine gun. Kovalev was always going to destroy him. It was obvious.
That's why we need a Kovalev and Stevenson fight so we can rub it in Bellew's face.
I remember how smug he was when he was picking Hopkins to beat Kovalev. He was like, oh, he chooses to fight Kovalev.
There's no better matchmaker in the sport than Bernard Hopkins. 12 round rape later. You didn't hear a peep out of him, did you?
Nope.
Exactly.
Yeah, I tell you what, I would love to see Kovalev against Bellew. That would be fucking gold.
No, I want to see the Russian Hammer. Russian Hammer in with Bellew. That's what I want to see.
Evil.
Kudryashov.
When Carlos Gomez and Palacios were roughly put to sleep licking the canvas. Alex, Steve, you got any nominations? No?
I don't know if I got a nomination or not. What about the Box Nation putting up $100,000 for
Oh God.
What was it again?
Katie Hopkins and what's her name? Charlotte Church.
Yeah, I got it on email, a press release. I put it up
$100,000.
chat. Something like that. Yeah, it's going back to the Freddie Flintoff days, isn't it?
Frank Ward could put up $100,000 for this fucking fight, yet he can't get some of the guys like Ricky Burns paid on time.
Well, he's going to pay in instalments over the next 53 years.
He pays Ricky Burns monopoly money and IOUs, and he wants to put $100,000 up for this shitfest, and he can't even pay to have the Channel of Champions show the South African fight on Saturday, and he wants to put $100,000 up for this.
Do you know what, though?
This is why Terry Marsh did what he did.
I think Box Nation have been on decent form recently. They've had some, apart from the big one, obviously, I think they've had some good fights, and I don't mind getting up. I know you guys always watch the HBO stream. My technology's crap, so I can't watch it. I always watch Burns, and they had Bunts, and they had Lockett on last night. I quite enjoyed it.
Aye, but would you get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, never mind Bernard Hopkins, to watch Katie Hopkins, Adam?
In with the Russian Hammer, I would.
The Welsh Hammer.
Kurt, you got anything, mate?
Ortiz, anyway.
You got it for Ortiz. Kurt, you got anything, mate?
Have we said Johnny Nelson's one?
What did he say?
He said Muhammad Ali wasn't an exciting fighter.
Fucking hell.
Fuck's sake. And he's one to fucking talk.
Aye, the dream. Aye, fuck me. The entertainer.
You know.
So, we've got Erislandi Lara, Kid Galahad, Kevin Mitchell of The Guardian, BJ Flores, Victor Ortiz, Johnny Nelson, Tony Bellew, and who was the other one? Steve, who was your one, mate?
I don't know,
Box
Collective
Nation.
Box Nation.
Aye, Box Nation, yep. So, Adam, I think you're voting for... Who are you voting for again?
Victor Ortiz.
Victor Ortiz. Alex, who you got, mate?
Oh, it's got to be Kid Galahad. Blaming his brother.
1-1. Steve?
I'll also go to the Kid Galahad, but I'll just say regarding Lara's, if I can quickly, I would cut him some slack on part of his because he wouldn't beat Golovkin. I don't know what that assertion's all about, but the second part, I think he said something like, I would make him look worse than Canelo. Well, stylistically, if the William Monroe Jr. fight's anything to go by, I think Lara would give Golovkin some stylistic problems, so I wouldn't necessarily hold that against him, but that said, Kid Galahad for me.
Just a reminder, Canelo did beat Lara.
Wow.
Just, I had that draw,
That's
but
up for-
it's
that's
it's up for debate. I mean, I can see swing for each fighter.
Yeah, and
If you
Lara's
wanna-
got that style to make him look bad, though. No one's
Yeah.
going to look good. I mean, look how Canelo's looked against Angulo and Kirkland. He's not going to do that against Lara. There's no way.
But then, look how Lara looked against Angulo. Angulo fucked him up in some of those rounds. Imagine Golovkin fucking doing that to him.
No, I just think Lara will give him the runaround for the first 3 or 4 rounds. That's all. I'm not saying he'll beat him, but I think stylistically he would give him more trouble than a guy who's going to stand right in front of him.
So it's 2-1 for Galahad. Kurt, who's getting your vote, mate?
Wow. I think we've all heard the old, my dog ate my homework excuse, but I've never had me brother spike to me drink with steroids. That
Go to
to me is a winner.
Go to be. Yeah, Kid Galahad, so, I mean, that's brilliant. I don't know if you could have come up with a better excuse. Maybe one of your protein drinks was laced or
Exactly,
whatever, you
or
know.
he just bought something off the counter that, he didn't read the ingredients, something like that, but my brother spiked me drink, and because he hates me.
I know, I mean, his brother's really got a lot to lose. I mean, he's in jail and stuff. I mean, he's got a job to protect and all that sort of stuff, you know.
I just like how he's just trailing behind him with these PEDs in his back pocket, just waiting for the perfect opportunity to just plant them on him.
Not so much that though, mate. It's a drug that he just knew it had to be a weight cutting drug that actually defined you kept your basically your mass on top of you, you could actually kind of cut weight better. He just knew it had to be that type of drug, you know.
Maybe he's like a Heisenberg type character. What's he in prison for?
I don't know, really, mate.
I can't believe that they're not giving poor Mick a thought in all this. His flipping blood pressure levels must be going through the roof. He's losing fighters and TV left, right, and
Now,
centre.
if you were gonna spike someone's drink with a weight cutter, why not Fat Mix?
Yeah.
Don't tweet Fat Mick, whatever you do if Galahad wins the award. You might tip him over the edge.
Fuck's sake.
He'll be going to the prison to contact his brother. Where's that fucking weight cutting drug? We've tried Atkins, I've tried fucking salad, nothing shits this shit.
He needs to try some exercising. But, oh god. I was going to say something else and I've actually it's been right out of my mind. About Galahad. Fuck.
Go on, let it out. Come on, we've had
I'm
red
trying
hits.
to remember what it was. I'm trying to remember what it was. No, it'll come back to me, I suppose. But anyway, I think Kid Galahad is getting the award. All I was going to say is, I mean, the decision paper isn't up on the UKAD website yet, so keep an eye on that, people, just to get the full reading of what actually happened. But I believe he actually failed his drugs test, or the drug test was taken right after his last fight, so that was, September? It's taken till May, roughly, unless he maybe knew before that, I don't know, but we've probably taken the best part of 6 months to kind of find out what's been going on. So anyway, Kid Galahad, sir, congratulations, you are a Belly of the Week award winner. Now, what we're on at 1 hour 24 minutes, and there isn't really a lot of action to discuss for next week, lads, certainly to review, so I kind of came up with this topic of conversation after reading an article by Ron Borges in this month's Boxing Monthly, and it's about Mike Tyson and is he overrated? Now, I actually asked the question, is Mike Tyson a top 10 ranked heavyweight of all time? And if he's not, is he top 15? Now, we've been talking off air and stuff, some people have got him inside just, some people have got him just on the outside of the top 10, certainly in the top 15. The argument is this guy's, if Donnie was here, he's a big Mike Tyson fan, he would probably be saying, yeah, he is definitely the top 10. For me, Mike Tyson is not a top 10 heavyweight. I just don't think he's got the opponents on his resume to stay. Certainly he hasn't got the top wins on his resume anyway to say he's a top 10 heavyweight. And one of the most startling observations was he has never got off the canvas to win a fight and more ultimately is he's never got off the canvas to even attempt to change a fight, which I think basically doesn't stack up against the likes of like Joe Louis, who got up off the floor numerous times, Muhammad Ali even got up off the floor. You know, I know Frazier got smashed off Foreman, but he got up 5 times before he was stopped. Jack Dempsey's been down. Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, they all came back, they all fought prime opposition. Tyson hasn't done it. Kurt, you got him inside your top 10, mate?
No, I don't think he makes the cut, to be honest. I think in a lot of people's minds he is overrated, because some of them, I've seen them say, you know, he's the best ever, and head to head he'd beat everyone. Well, I think head to head that's just fantasy. So you can say that about anyone. You could say, you know, how would Rocky Marciano or Jack Dempsey do against a 250-pound Klitschko or Lennox Lewis? Does that mean that they should be ahead of them or they're greater? I mean, I don't think head to heads really matter in this. I think you've got to go by what they did. And I think with Mike Tyson, he's one of those fighters, a bit like Riddick Bowe. If he had retired or left the sport and never came back after the Michael Spinks fight, I think people would, a bit like Roy Jones when he fought John Ruiz, I think he'd be really higher in a lot of people's estimations. But because he carried on and he had the shock loss to Buster Douglas, and then he went to prison, which, you know, he was never the same after that. Then when he came back out, you know, he got his ass handed to him by Evander Holyfield. He bitched out in the second fight of Evander Holyfield. And, you know, he never really won another top fight. I mean, he got absolutely handled by Lennox Lewis, which, you know, I don't really give him any grief for, because he was well past it at that stage. But, you know, people seem to give him a pass for the Holyfield fights, but Holyfield had retired, I think, a year or 2 years previously to that because of a heart problem. He was given no chance against Mike Tyson, and he bullied him and he beat him up. And in the second fight, we all know what he did with the ear bite, because he couldn't
Basically made him
couldn't
quit.
handle the pressure. And I think he's a flat track bully, and he's a mental midget. And when someone fights back and isn't intimidated by him, I don't think he handled it very well. He wasn't used to it. I think he's an intimidating figure who is used to people being scared of him. And someone like Evander Holyfield, he's not scared of no one, and he couldn't deal with that. Now, that's still not to say he didn't do incredible things, because to be, you know, 20, 21 years old and be the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, and to be destroying the fight as he was, I mean, someone like Larry Holmes I mentioned off air, yeah, he was past it when Tyson got to him, but no one did that to Larry Holmes before or after, and Holmes carried on for a long time after that. You know, Michael Spinks was a really great light heavyweight. Obviously, he moved up, but he did move up and beat Larry Holmes. We all saw what Tyson did to him. I mean, Spinks was beaten before the bell even rung. I mean, he looked terrified, and, you know, he beat, you know, respectable guys, and, you know, like I said, he was the man in the division, but people were looking at him as if he was unbeatable. And Buster Douglas shattered that, and people make excuses again, you know, he didn't train, or, you know, out the ring activities, which, yeah, I can agree with, but at the end of the day, what can we do? You know, other people have problems and they have to get through it, and I think if you look at the way the division was, he should have, you know, been the man in the division for a long time, but he couldn't cut it at the top level. So I think, you know, what he did was impressive, but it was all too short, and I think his losses have to be, you know, held against him, and I think, you know, the shortness of his reign has to be held against him, because you've got other guys in there who have far better wins or have long reigns. So for me, he's a top 15, but not top 10 for me.
I mean, just let this sink in for a minute. See when he fought Franz Botha, and he knocked him out in 5 rounds, but some people actually forget that Tyson was losing that fight in all scorecards. I think in actually one scorecard, the fact 2 of the scorecards actually had the fight a complete shutout in relation to Franz Botha.
He got frustrated, didn't he? Tried to break Franz Botha's arm in that one.
Yeah, I think that was one where the referee couldn't get him to break up, aye.
And you got to remember the Buster Douglas fight. He wasn't in that fight either, really. Buster Douglas,
I mean, it's quite sad.
On top of him.
It's quite sad that when you look at his resume, you could probably say that his best win on his resume, okay, Larry Holmes, but people are going to say Holmes was coming off a 2-year retirement. So you go back further, you go to say Michael Spinks was his best win, but still then, Spinks wasn't a fully fledged, legit heavyweight. He was a career light heavyweight. And a brilliant one at that. He stepped up and took the chance, but then again, as I say, he's not a legit heavyweight.
Spinks was as you said, he was a great light heavyweight, and he just happened to get a Larry Holmes who was obviously on the decline, but even then the fights were extremely close, both fights, and I thought Holmes actually won the second fight. So, but I mean, Spinks did his thing, and but Mike could only beat who he had in front of him, and he did it comprehensively. But like I said, he had that intimidating factor about him. He was like the late '80s version of Sonny Liston. I mean, he intimidated everyone, but he never against Buster Douglas. Obviously, he never got the rematch because he went to prison later on. But when he came out of prison, people still believe that he could be what he once was, and he just wasn't there. And, once Holyfield beat him, that was the end of his career, I felt. He still went on a little world tour, picking up wins here and there, but, he was never the same, and it was a wasted career because he should have been a lot better, and I think he should have done a lot more if he, maybe, obviously we know his background wasn't great either, and, obviously that played a part, but it's just a shame that he didn't have good people around him who could, keep him on the straight and narrow because, I mean, he could have been so much better than what he was, which is a shame.
Steve, do you have him in the top 10?
No, I have him number 13. It's very subjective.
I was going to ask, do you think people maybe overestimate or actually overrank him simply based on the fact that he was an explosive puncher, B, because he won the title at 20, 21 years of age, and C, simply because the hype surrounding him was probably, it's actually bigger than what I would say that the Hearns are doing with AJ just now, actually, but, just the hype surrounding Mike Tyson around about the late 80s was absolutely phenomenal, and, at some point he had to come crashing down. I think that those three things basically kind of overrate him in many people's estimations.
Well, I think regarding the hype, he built the hype, and the hype built with him as he went along. I think rather than the Joshua hype is sort of very contrived before he even turned professional, the hype was starting to build. But you actually made all the exact points that I was going to make myself, Andy. Like I said, these lists are very subjective, so you can't really say. I mean,
you're right, I'm wrong, basically, yeah.
Well, what does the individual look for? I mean, Tyson's career inside the ring, due to his personality, due to the way his fighting style, like Kurt said, he wasn't mentally the strongest. It was always going to be a fast and furious career. He burnt out quickly, burnt out fast. He never really had a very long peak, a very long prime, and whenever he came out of prison, obviously he wasn't the same fighter again. So, I mean, are you then taking into account the fact that he sort of transcended the sport in a way that he brought a lot of excitement to the division? He injected the incitement after the sort of Holmes era. He was a different type of animal. He was straight ahead, the punching power. He got rid of people in a round. People wanted to stay up late at night to watch him. Even now, I mean, everyone sort of knows a Mike Tyson, whether you're a boxing fan or not. Do you then credit his legacy based upon that fact, or do you purely look at what he did in the ring, the people he beat, the people he didn't fight? Whether he got up from a knockdown and won, whether he won on the road. I mean, do you take all these things into account? I think maybe I would be boosting him up a couple of places for the effect that he had on the sport as a whole, for his personality, rather than his in-the-ring activities, which if you look at it, his in-the-ring activities, even though he was a young guy who won the title against Berbick, and it's not to be sniffed at, his record in the ring, but it's not, it is very short. It's not a huge,
but
a huge,
the likes of Berbick and Ruddock, though, they're probably maybe B, C level fighters.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. There's not a load of names really that stand up, and if you start as you go on through for the record and you see the names that he fought, they're all losses in the column against the bigger names. So you have to weigh that up as well. So if you're looking at purely what he did in the ring before he went to prison, especially, he would struggle to sort of break the top 15 or top 20 or whatever. I wouldn't have him as high as top 10. I'd have him as 13, maybe a generous 13, but again, based it on a lot of outside of the ring things.
Alex and Adam, do you guys have him in your top 10? I'm going to try and get roughly your guys. If you haven't got a top 10, it's not a big issue, but I just want to see if you've maybe got him inside your top 10, and certainly if you've not, where would you basically rank him? Start with you, Adam.
I've not got him in the top 10, to be honest. I'm like 15, but not 10. And first things first, what's triggered the conversation tonight? That article in Boxing Monthly is superb. I think Ron Burgess, as you said, the author, absolutely superb and recommended to anyone to read. And I think first and foremost, Tyson was a phenomenon in that the marketing and the hype train in America at the time got behind it and pushed it to the forefront so much. He was a pay-per-view phenomenon, and everyone, it almost stopped what you was doing kind of thing. And it was kind of the last time especially thinking of the Japanese fight against Douglas, was the last time that we've really had a heavyweight go on the world roadshow, if you like. I know that Ali, Frazier and those guys did it, Manila, etc. But I think that was, kind of the last time that happened, and we were all Vegas bound a lot of the time now. So I think the story went quite well. He was young, from a very difficult background of crime, etc., living on the outskirts of New York with a white father figure kind of thing, and the story was definitely there. He was knocking people out for fun, and the hype train went from there. And I know we've mentioned the Sky hype train with Joshua. It wasn't as premeditated as that particular hype train is what we're seeing now. The Tyson one almost happened naturally, and obviously progressed very quickly, and he had a fun style. And I think ultimately he was probably the most talented boxer or raw talent that I've known in my time following the sport. But obviously a lot of it went to waste. And at the time he came to the forefront, it was a division in a little bit of a lull. We had the guys mentioned. We had them, the Larry Holmes and the Spinks, etc., that were almost coming to an end of their reign, and then Tyson was the one to take it on. And as Steve said, his peak was very short, and obviously the time in jail didn't help. But I don't think he had a defining win over a prime elite fighter, as has been mentioned. I think he had 6 losses on his record, all 6 didn't go the distance. I know he didn't get knocked out in Holyfield too, but certainly that was his doing, and some say that was premeditated. So I think the fact, I might be going a little bit off topic, but the fact that he didn't have a defining win over a prime and elite fighter, almost comparisons to De La Hoya a little bit, who often came up short, against the likes of Mosley, Hopkins, etc. But maybe that's for another day. A good point brought up in the article actually was, good sources close to Tyson and close to his career said that he avoided an aging George Foreman for quite a while, and that was something that I was previously unaware of. And
44 years of age as well.
Yeah.
Apparently Customato they'd actually watched the Frazier-George Foreman fight, and apparently by extension of Frazier's style, i.e. Tyson, Foreman's style was the antidote for the likes of like Frazier style, aka Tyson style as well.
Yeah.
Swarman's short fighters,
Yeah, and I was unaware of that, but I think also I know it shouldn't really affect my opinion, and I know that some people disagree with me on this, but like Roy Jones, I think he's just gone on too long, and it does affect your legacy. He's been got the last guy. I know Danny Williams is bad enough, but the last guy is it McBride he got beat by. I mean, he's no better than white knuckle standard, to be honest, lads, that we can see in any of the city centres we live in currently. And that's a bad way to go out. And I think he has over time since retirement, he's certainly mellowed, especially from that famous Lennox Lewis press conference. He certainly mellowed since then, but I don't know if that particularly helps, to be honest. I just think he went on too long, which is the same old story, for boxing. But ultimately, I don't think he would make it into my top 10. No.
That's chemically induced calmness, though. That's the only thing.
Yeah, possibly.
Alex, I'll let you finish up with this one, mate, and then we'll try and get through each other's top 10 before doing the fight reviews. I suppose as I say at the start of this discussion, that says one of the main things is Tyson never once got up off the floor, and considering how much to get off the floor, so to turn a fight or even win a fight, to think that Klitschko actually gets a lot of shit just now is he's actually done more than what Tyson did, get up off the floor 3 times in one fight and still win it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to really go into a debate about to bring Vlad into this. Just really keep it onto Mike Tyson. I don't have him in my. I'm breaking up. How's it going now?
That's better.
Bit better now. Okay.
Yeah, when you go back.
I don't have Mike Tyson in my top 10 either. I could see it maybe skirting the top 15, but really, I'm just going to be reiterating a lot of points that you guys have said. I did have a point, but it seems to have lost in my head. Yeah, the point was that, if you're rating him basically on the fact that, who the most famous fighters were and who the most, important fighters were. You've got to say Mike Tyson is probably one of the most famous fighters ever to live. I mean, people that have never watched boxing in their life know who Mike Tyson is, just like they know who Muhammad Ali is, or, you know, for some people in America, especially Joe Louis is a bit like that as well. Mike Tyson's right up there, but, you know, in these sort of lists and lists that we make as, you know, as more hardcore fans of the sport, we're really rating him, you know, as a fighter, as it were. You know, you've got to include the impact that he had on the sport, and the impact was phenomenal. I mean, he changed the game almost. He was the absolute center of the sport. You know, what Mike Tyson was doing was what boxing was doing, essentially, you know, when he was at his peak and all of the hype was surrounding him. And, you know, as a fighter, he had his peak, and the win, you know, the fact that he's still the youngest heavyweight champion of the world, and that will probably... It doesn't seem like it'll be broken. You know, young lads these days really don't get into the boxing that much these days. If you're an American, you either just go off and do your American football or things like that. And, you know, Britain, you tend to go to the Olympics or something, or if you're that young, you just got a lower weight. You know, you're a cruiserweight or you're a light heavyweight. So it's a record that I think will stand, and that's something to definitely credit with him with. But the fact is, either by virtue that there wasn't really anyone around at that time for him to really prove himself against when he was in his absolute prime, or just simply the fact that, you know, he went to prison and then he came out, he wasn't the same guy, and then, you know, he lost against Holyfield, and he didn't fight Lennox, Lennox till later on, should I say, and he didn't fight Bowe. That, you know, the fact that he didn't take those fights and the fact he lost against Holyfield really went against him, I feel. So, you know, he is a very important figure to the sport, and that shouldn't be lost amongst the fact that he wasn't as good of a fighter as a lot of people think he was. I think that, you know, we can say all ifs and buts, you know, about any fighter in their prime. Like we've mentioned Roy Jones, you know, if he bowed out after he beat, Ruiz, then he would be considered probably top 5, almost even top 10 of all time. I mean, that's just phenomenal, but he didn't. And Mike Tyson didn't bow out at the top of his career. And ultimately, that's what plays on it. And he's going to be remembered fondly. He's just going to be one of those names, but as a fighter, he really can't be rated that high.
So that leads us on now to our personal top 10. Now, if you can't get a top 10, just give me a top 5. I'll start now. Obviously, I think 1 and 2 are pretty much interchangeable, depending on what your personal viewpoint is. Personally, I would have Ali, but I've no dispute if you've got Lewis at number 2, so probably Ali, Joe Louis. Probably then I'll go for Jack Johnson, Izzard Charles, Sam Langford, maybe Harry Willis. And I think probably did I mention Larry Holmes, number 3, did I? No, it was Jack Johnson. So probably Larry Holmes. I would definitely have Evander Holyfield probably in the top 10. Maybe Lewis, simple fact is he's managed to he beat all the guys he fought, certainly even the rematches as well. And maybe finally rounding it off, maybe the likes of, I'd like to put Jersey Joe Walcott in there, but I know he's a great light heavyweight, so maybe just leave him out and maybe say, Gene Tunney, maybe rounding off the top 10. Kurt, what about you, mate?
Yeah, I'd have Joe Louis as number 1, Muhammad Ali number 2. I've gone for Larry Holmes at 3. I know people will say, well, you know, he had a lot of soft defences, but I still like the fact that he reigned for such a long time, and, you know, I think he's a really skilled fighter. I like watching him fight. Jack Johnson at number 4, because basically he was the first black heavyweight champion. You know, he wasn't supposed to do it, and he did, and I think he should get recognition. George Foreman at 5.
Wait a minute, just play devil's advocate. Should he get the recognition for then ducking the top black contenders of his day? Sam McVeigh, Joe Jeanette, Sam Langford, ducked all those guys. Especially the heavyweight champion, anyway.
Yeah, but how many of them did he fight before he became champ? I mean, those guys...
He fought Langford at least once, I know of. I think he fought McVeigh. You know,
he just never,
Paris once?
He just never gave them the shot once he became the champion, but they did fight before that, and I don't think that was all. I mean, that was just the bullshit at the time. That was just the colour line that was drawn. I mean, he drew it just like a lot of the white fighters did. It's just the way it was.
Against Harry Wills, yep.
I mean, I'd have George Foreman at number 5, and not just I think if he stayed retired, I don't think he would be there. But his devastating performance against Joe Frazier, and the fact that he came back when he was a fat old guy basically and knocked out Michael Moorer, I think he should be in there. I think then I got Jack Dempsey. And I've actually got Evander Holyfield ranked 7. I've got him ranked above Lennox Lewis, who beat him officially once, but that's, I'll speak about that another time. Yeah. Then I've got Lennox Lewis, Rocky Marciano, and Joe Frazier makes the number 10.
Number 10. Steve, you able to round that up, mate?
Yeah, I've scribbled one down tentatively here. From 10 downwards, I've got, excuse me, Dempsey, Marciano, Frazier, Holyfield, Foreman, Holmes, Lennox Lewis, Johnson, Joe Lewis, Ali.
Alex?
Again, I really didn't prepare very well for this, so I can only I'll give you the top 5. Ali, number 1, Joe Lewis, number 2. 3, I suppose it's interchangeable, 3 and 4, I would go Holmes and Jack Johnson, and then 5 would be George Foreman. I think George Foreman, the fact that he essentially just had 2 careers, 2 excellent careers at that were, spaced so far apart, and, that really puts him in the top 5 for me, and I think he's just, excellent fighter.
Adam, who's your top 5, top 10, mate?
Well, it's a big decision not to put the likes of Fraudley Harrison and David Stewart in there, but no, I'm by no means an expert, but I've got Lewis as 1, followed by Holyfield, Larry Holmes, Jack Johnson, Foreman as 5.
You got Ali in that top 5?
Yeah, Ali's 2.
You said Holyfield number 2.
I've got Lewis as 1, Ali as 2, Holmes as 3, Johnson as 4, Foreman as 5, Marciano 6, Lewis 7, Dempsey 8, Frazier 9, and is it as a Charles? I think as number 10.
No Carl Froch in there, Adam.
I did consider Carl Froch, and seriously, I don't think Vladimir is far away from being in my top 10. But I didn't want to upset the apple cart. But I
think he certainly ranks higher than Tyson anyway.
Yeah,
but see the thing about Dempsey,
I think Dempsey's hatred.
I think the thing with Dempsey's got something like 7 Hall of Fame wins. But at the same time, as he drew the colour line well, because inactive as heavyweight champion, inactive as heavyweight champion, inactive as heavyweight champion, active as heavyweight champion. So I think as heavyweight champion, so I think that goes against his final listing.
He went a long time without fighting, didn't he? He only fought now and again once he was champion. That's the problem. I mean, in years it was quite a long reign, but he only had about 4 fights in that 7 years or whatever it was off the top of my head.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Kurt? Prime Tyson, prime Vlad? Do you reckon the mental midget will fall under the jab and grab?
Yes.
That's like asking, does night follow day? Of course he would. Steel hammer would intimidate him.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, that's been a good wee discussion that anyway. We'll need to get some more tuned up. But next week, as I say, we're kind of light on action next week, but some good fights.
James
anyway.
DeGale next week.
James DeGale, yeah, but before we do, Friday is actually Box Nation, and I think they announced today they're going to be showing the card from Moscow, which is going to have Gregor Drozad having his WBC Cruiserweight title defence. I was on Povetkin against Mike Perez, which should be a decent enough heavyweight scrap. We're looking forward to that one. Rakim Chakachev faces off against Junior Wright for some sort of Cruiserweight trinket. Alex Leapai against Manuel Char, absolute third. And then the one fighter we're all looking forward to, I know Kurt's looking forward to him, I'm looking forward to him, the Russian hammer, Dmitry Kudryashov, faces off against some African guy called the Beastmaster. Jimmy must be Jimmy Savile's fucking brother. Jimmy Savile's come back, reincarnated himself, fucking hell.
Brother of Savile. Has he fought in the canteen?
From Namibia, mate. Let me give him a second here. He has 4.
Only the canteen could make him see 3 rounds, I reckon, the toughness of it. Otherwise,
oh no, mate. No. I mean, you hear some of these places that he's fought. He's fought in the Windhoek Country Club Resort. He has.
Sounds like a golf club.
Yeah, he's fought at the Sporting Congress Centre in Germany. In fact, he's fought at that golf club quite a few times. Emperor's Palace, South Africa. Accra International Conference Centre. Ramatex Factory in Namibia. Okay.
The paint factory.
I don't know.
What was that at the end
If
of
he's
it?
got highlights in his hair, he's maybe had a massive party in a Dulux warehouse, you know. So, Winnie du Palais Secondary School Hall. Okay.
Was that
Safe
when
to
he
say
was at
this
school?
guy. Safe to say this guy he's never been defeated. So he's never been stopped. Sorry, he's lost 4 fights but never been stopped. He's got 28 wins, 14 knockouts. If this guy lasts 3 rounds, I'll be well impressed.
Just on the Povetkin fight, that's a pretty decent fight, really, isn't it? With Perez?
Yeah, Povetkin against Perez might be good, but again, I still maintain I don't think Perez is the same fighter after
No, he's
the
not.
Abdul Salamov fight.
Definitely not.
He's-
And I think Povetkin will be quite a lot
Isn't
bigger
it?
than him, won't he?
Physical and mental condition with Perez are the two things.
Yeah, mentally though, I just think after that fight, I mean, he definitely didn't look great against Bryant Jennings. Bryant Jennings didn't look great against him either.
Was that the draw?
The Takam
Takam
fight
was the
was
draw,
the
wasn't it?
draw. I think Jennings, he lost it by a point, I think.
Yeah.
He lost it against Jennings, didn't he, rather than Jennings winning it? I thought he threw it away by gassing. He was beating Jennings hands
Yeah.
down early on.
And he'll certainly have no place to hide in Russia as well if he is off his game.
Just back to the Beastmaster. He was obviously a light heavyweight because he lost the decision to Jurgen Breimer. This is just scary. He's going in with a Russian hammer at cruiserweight. The Beastmaster is obviously one of those teak tough men.
Who's the Russian hammer? Who's this guy you're on about?
This is Dmitry Krudishov, mate. I mean, go Google, go into YouTube. In fact, we'll post his fights up. Check out his fights against Juan Carlos Gomez and Francisco Palacios.
How the friggin' hell do you spell that?
Dmitry.
Yeah, I got that.
You got Dmitry right, and it's I'll just spell it out for you.
K-R something.
Kudyashov. He's 17-0 with 17 knockouts.
Kudyashov? Right, okay. I'll mute and go and watch it.
Kudyashov.
And he
He looks like a Russian sort of crack dealer. It's hard as fuck.
He looks like he's part of some biker gang that he's a bit like Kovalev as well, but he actually fought the Sudocrem guy who Balyu's fighting, and he wasted him. He wasted Juan Carlos Gomez, who was...
Sudocrem.
Aye, Gomez got put under the bottom rope. I mean, it was evil. I mean, in that one with Palacios, it was just a whipping left hook right in the temple. The guy just fucking folded up like a bad habit.
Right, I've got the Palacios fight. I'll go off and watch that now.
Anyways, we've got a British fighter on world title duty next week. Before we do mention it, Steve, Gary Spike O'Sullivan's fighting on that card next week in Boston against Melvin Bettencourt. I watched this guy's last fight actually, a 4-round
What's he
knockout.
like? He's got a good record, hasn't he?
He seems, well, I think he's never fought outside of Dominican Republic, which is the main thing, so you just don't know what he's going to be like. It says, I've only seen the highlights of his last fight against this guy at Soto, I think it was. Knocked him out in 4 rounds. Seems to be pretty open, but it looks like he will come and have a go. Seems to be kind of quite well with his punches, but I still expect Spike to stop him, actually.
I hope so. It's strange to know what's going on with Spike's career, isn't it? He seems to... I thought after he knocked out Fitzgerald on Sky that Eddie was interested in him, and he's been back and forward with Eubank Jr. on the Twitter a lot of times, and I thought one of those 2 fights are going to happen, but he keeps on... He's done this throughout his career. He ventures off to America every now and again, and he's who's he? Dropkick Murphys, I think. Ken Casey he's linked up with. So he's got some contacts over there, so he seems to be trying to forge a career in the States. But I would have liked to have seen him fight Eubank on Box Nation. That would have been one for me. By the way, the Kudyashov fight has actually just finished in the first round there while I was talking. So
which one was that fight, mate?
the last one, Palacios, lasted about 30
evil,
seconds.
He lives by the motto. He doesn't get paid for overtime. The Gomez one lasts about 20 seconds.
Kills by the gun, you know. But anyways, guys, I take it the main talking point next week for us is going to be James DeGale challenging for the vacant IBF super middleweight title that was vacated by Carol Froch, or stripped, shall we say, against the running man Andre Darrell. I'm favouring DeGale in this fight. I really do think he's going to have a hard night of it, though. I mean, getting Darrell to stand in front of you for any longer than 5 seconds is going to be a mean task. But I think DeGale, southpaw stance, I do think he's much bigger at the weight. I think he might even surprise Darrell, actually, especially down the pike with a straight left hand, and I'm really pulling for DeGale, because Darrell really does my tits in. In fact, I would really love to see DeGale smash him and knock him out, actually. And I think it was his last fight, he started that clowning stuff against Derek Edwards and got caught in the 12th round.
Yeah.
Almost, basically, he was like Bambi on ice for a little bit.
He was hurt and he tried to play it off.
Yeah. I think, I don't know what was his nickname before the Carol Froch fight?
The Matrix.
The Matrix. He's now called the Resurrector. But the resurrected, as it shall
No,
we
it's
say.
the running man. I coined that, and I stick with that.
The running man. But
He got
anyway,
Cobra though, didn't he?
I'm pulling for De Gale. I think he'll maybe, I mean, maybe no stop him, but I think he'll take it wide in the cards. I'd love to see him knock him out. Kurt, I'll start with Kurt, Steve, Alex, and Adam. You can finish off.
Yeah.
Kurt.
Oh, yeah, I agree that I really hope DeGale wins this. I mean, I'm not a fan of Dirrell. I never have been, but he's a really good boxer and he's very good at what he does. You know, but the problem with him is it's been like, I mean, if you can believe it, 5 years since he fought Abraham. I mean, that's crazy when you think about it. That was his best performance. The Froch fight I thought was there for him to win, but because of his lack of, you know, he was just so scared to get anywhere close to Froch, and, you know, Froch didn't land anything of note, and, you know, by the rules of boxing, you know, Dirrell should have got the win, I thought, but because he acted such a bitch in that fight, you know, I got no problem with Froch getting that because Froch wanted to fight. But since the Abraham fight, he's been away, you know, with Dr. Shawhai about his head injury and all this other nonsense, and he comes back now and again, he goes away again, and he's just fought really nobody since then. And like you said in the last fight with Edwards, I thought, you know, yeah, he won pretty convincingly, but I did think he was hurt at the end. He played it off a bit. But it's just tough because if he's at his best like he was during the Abraham fight, then I just think it's going to be really tough for DeGale to beat him. I mean, DeGale's a talented guy, but I just think Dirrell's style is horrible for him because Dirrell, he's quick, he's such a good mover, his upper body movement's excellent, and he can punch pretty hard himself as well. And I always thought that him fighting Andre Ward would be a really tough fight for Ward, and I still think that if he's back to his best, but because we haven't seen him in with top talent since the Abraham and Froch fight, we just don't know. But, you know, being in America and a Heyman card, I just think DeGale's going to be up against it, and I think you've got to favour Dirrell on points, but it's a close fight, but I just think Dirrell's going to just have a bit too much for him, and he's going to be very defensive, and he's going to make DeGale miss a lot, and I just think he's going to win the fight, you know, a boring style like he does.
Yeah, I agree with Kurt. I think it's going to be a Dirrell points victory. I think the fight's there for DeGale to win, but I'm not sure if he'll be able to do enough to impress the American judges, and I fancy Dirrell to win it on points. I also think that the Carl Froch fight was there for Dirrell to win as well. He threw that one away.
I thought he won it, actually, no, honestly. And Froch, I thought he won it by about 2 points.
I thought he won it by a point or maybe even a draw, but it was his own fault because he didn't rubber stamp the victory. I thought Froch was missing an awful lot that night. He hardly landed anything at all, and the fight was there for Dirrell on away soil to really stamp his authority and say, you know, I'm the winner here, and he didn't. So I could see why he didn't get that, and that was his own fault. And that has been the summary of his whole career, putting aside the likes of the Abraham fight. I think for his talent, for his athletic ability, I was really impressed with him early on when he was coming up, and I thought he was going to be a real star. And he's just, for whatever reason, he hasn't delivered the goods at all. He hasn't acted on his ability and the natural talent that he has. I think he's going to go down as a wasted talent.
And Steve, if you remember the Groves fight, Groves went on the back foot, and DeGale looked pretty clueless for a lot of that fight, I thought. Even though it ended up being a close fight, I thought he didn't know what to do and he didn't expect it. And now I think Dirrell's just so much better at Groves at doing that kind of style. I just see it's going to be so hard for him to deal with it.
Well, exactly. We all thought that Groves was going to lead off in that fight, didn't we? And he surprised everybody by going on the back foot. Dirrell's going to make DeGale lead, and DeGale's going to have to make the fight, isn't he? Again, being on away soil. How is he going to manage that? Has he improved? Has he matured since the early fights? We'll wait and see. I just don't think that stylistically Dirrell does anything for him at all.
Interestingly, actually, I remember Groves actually used Dirrell as sparring partner for the DeGale fight. She just wondered maybe, you know, they looked at the style, maybe think it's maybe something similar to each other, so they maybe cancel each other out. Alex, you want to give us your take on the fight, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone a bit back and forth on who I actually want to win this. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of James DeGale, but he has impressed me in the last couple of fights. I mean, even though the stoppage against Fat Paraban wasn't exactly, you know, the most credible stoppage, he did look good in that fight. He looked a lot more powerful and a lot more sort of mature, I guess. And I think that he really could give Dirrell problems. Like you said, I think the left hand down the middle will be a big problem for him if he does try to engage DeGale too much in a proper fight. But you know, his running man tactics will, you know, it will serve him a bit better this time because he is well, not necessarily on home turf, but he is with Heyman and in his own country, and he's going to benefit from that. He's going to benefit from, just anything that makes him look good and makes DeGale look reaching, I suppose. So I think that maybe he will go for that. Maybe he'll think, I got robbed over in the UK last time, so but now I'm at my home and I can do that and I'll get away with it. But who knows? I mean, I'm really struggling to pick. I'm going to go with Darrell, but a close one for Darrell. I would quite like James to win. He has impressed me, and I think that he could go on to do a lot better things as well than Darrell could. I think that we'll get a lot more better fights, because super middleweight is always, not always, but it's had a tradition of doing quite well in this country, and I think DeGale winning that belt certainly sets up a lot more really exciting fights. Obviously, the Groves rematch, Frotch if he finally decides to, stop running scared from James DeGale, and
I can't believe you can say them words with a straight face.
And obviously, Callum Smith as well, if he does well, continues to do well. There's a few fights there.
And finally, Adam.
I think, hope and want James DeGale to win the fight. Note to Sky Sports, this will be the first live 50-50 fight they've shown for possibly this year.
Just this year?
Pardon?
Just this year.
Yeah,
this year.
Yeah, but they did want to show. They did want to show Frotch against DeGale, but Frotch didn't fancy it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a pity they didn't want to show McDonald against Comedy. That was pretty much 50-50.
That was a shocker, actually, they didn't show that live. I'll tell you what, actually, just on that topic, I noticed quite a few of the, shall we say, the more mainstream boxing media, guys from Boxing Monthly and Boxing Scene, they have now started kind of grumbling about some of this. Well, the fact is, I think the final stumbling block was last week. They didn't show Burns and McDonald live, and that was the final straw for a lot of people there last week. And it seems to be the more mainstream media are starting to fucking don't like it as well.
I think they saw my article on it and just thought that guy knows what he's talking about. He's right. Let's get on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I think DeGale wins. I agree with a lot of the points already said. Like Steve said, I think Darrell's a waste of talent. I've got a groundbreaking statement to make. I was there in Nottingham that night, and in the arena, I thought Andre Darrell beat Carl Frotch. Shock horror.
Oh, fuck, where's that?
So that's 3 losses he's got now, according to you, yeah? Okay, we remember that.
But yeah, I think, like I say, I think Darrell, is going, he's not the...
Oh, we've lost Adam there. Adam, you've just cut out there, mate.
Carl Frotch pulled the plug. He heard it and just had his internet shut down.
I think Belgew's been at the door, just kicked his fucking back door in.
Is that what he said? I've only got 2 losses. I avenge the loss of Kessler.
That's Lee Frotch and his Mankini's round attacking him.
Hello?
Are you there? Good. I was just going to end the show there. I thought you cut off. What happened?
I don't know. Obviously the Skype couldn't handle me saying something negative about Frotch.
We thought Bellew came in your back door with like the SAS.
He ain't going nowhere near my fucking back door. So anyway, yeah, I think DeGale wins, and I actually think DeGale wins by knockout, and he's 4-1 to knock him out, and I will be betting on that. And I'm glad that it's on the PBC thing, so we can watch it at a normal English time. And there is some decent fights out there for DeGale, of course. And no, Carl Frotch is not running from James DeGale.
What time is this fight next week?
It's on prime time.
9:30.
Good stuff.
Yeah. That's one thing I can't see a knockout in this fight. I just don't see it. I mean, I think Darrell's the puncher in this fight, to be honest, but I don't think he's going to stop DeGale either.
I think DeGale's maybe got slightly underrated power. Actually, I thought there were times in that Groves fight when he maybe, even though when he did land, did look like he was actually hurting him actually more than what Groves was doing.
He's a bit slappy though, isn't he? That's the
problem. That's the thing. Anyway, so that's for next week, guys. I'd like to thank you all for being on the podcast today. Steve Wellens, Adam Smith, Alex Morris, and Kurt Ward. I'd like to thank Paul McAllister for coming on for a quick, brief moment. Twitter questions, all you guys on Mixer, thanks a lot. We'll see you again next week. Have a good week. All the best. Cheers.
Carl Frotch, happy retirement.
Auden Harrison, number 1 heavyweight.